Chapter 3560, Shocking News, 12. Yu Minji gave Feng Wu a thumbs up. My little wife is amazing. Whose wife is she? I'll slap you if you keep talking nonsense. Feng Sun smacked Yu Mingvi on the head. Rubbing his head, Yu Minji glared at Feng Sun. Hey, you're not even in the spiritual overlord stage. Are you trying to provoke me? Screw you. Feng Sun was so frustrated that he didn't know what to say. Was Yu Minji born to piss him off? Seeing that the two of them were about to argue again, Feng Wu was speechless. She quickly changed the subject. By the way, how's Hua? Wu Shuang? Have you been brainwashing her? As a semi-divine medicine refiner, Feng Wu had plenty of incredible potions. For example, she modified the psychedelic drug and turned it into a brainwashing potion. They drugged Hua Wushuang until the latter almost had a nervous breakdown. After that, they kept brainwashing Hua Wushuang so that Hua Wushuang believed that Sui Qingxi wanted to rape her to ruin her engagement with Jun Linyuan. Just like that, they brainwashed Hua Wushuang over and over again. Don't worry about that. Yu Minji patted his chest. I've been brainwashing her every 2 hours. I guarantee that she bought that story. Apart from killing Sui Qingxi and the Zhou family, she won't have any other thoughts. Feng Wu nodded. The drug was so powerful that it almost felt wrong to use it. If the Zhou family and the Hua family hadn't joined forces to destroy the Feng clan, Feng Wu wouldn't have used it. Just then, there was a commotion outside. What's going on? Feng Wu frowned. The driver was one of Yu Minji's elders. It's the elders of the Hua family. They're looking for someone everywhere. It's probably Hua Wushuang. The carriage is blocked. We're stopped here. We can't get through. They've blocked every street entrance. Every carriage is being searched. Feng Wu hadn't expected the Hua family to be so fast. As they spoke, the Hua family's search party happened to come over. The person in the lead was Aunt Shi. Aunt Shi was a spiritual overlord. It was as if she sensed something because her first reaction was to guard the path that led to the Feng clan. Get out of the carriage! The person beside Aunt Shi shouted angrily. Yu Minji's elder smirked. Even His Majesty wouldn't be so rude to us. Who do you think you are? Do you want to die? The elder lashed out with his whip. He was also a spiritual overlord. The whip almost hit Aunt Shi in the face. Immediately, Aunt Shi's face darkened. Is young Master Yu Minji of the Dark Dynasty in the carriage? Aunt Shi suppressed her temper and asked nicely. Yu Minji snorted. Aunt Shi bowed and said, Young Master Yu, I'm really sorry. An important person of the Flower Valley is missing, so we set up checkpoints on the way. Since it's your carriage, feel free to get through. Feel free. Yu Minji smirked. She was indeed afraid of him. He was about to tell his elder to start the carriage when Feng Wu shook her head. If they don't see the inside clearly, they'll keep suspecting you. It's not a good thing to be suspected because the Hua family and the Zhou family will probably drag other people into their conflict, and the Dark Dynasty can be useful. Feng Wu shook her head. You too get out of the carriage. Yu Minji said, but... Out. Feng Wu frowned and looked serious. As soon as Feng Wu became serious, Yu Minji behaved like a puppy and said obediently. All right. Chapter 3561, Shocking News, 13. Feng Sun dragged Yu Minji out of the carriage. Feng Sun knew that Feng Wu must have a solution. The girl was never short of ideas. After chasing out of the carriage, Yu Minji was displeased to see Aunt Shi. How dare you? Do you think I'm hiding a criminal in my car? Come on. Let's find out. Yu Minji swaggered over to Aunt Shi. Aunt Shi naturally revered the heir of the Dark Dynasty. I wouldn't dare. Why wouldn't you? You've made us get out of the carriage. Why wouldn't you search for it? Crossing his arms, Feng Sun smirked. Young Lord Feng, Aunt Shi said lightly. Feng Sun said, let's get it over with. We still have things to do. Aunt Shi stared at the carriage. The curtains were closed, so it was difficult for her to see what was inside. She suddenly asked, Young masters, where are you going? Feng Sun smirked. Why, Is the Hua family interfering with Northern Feng Mansion? Do I have to be interrogated on where I'm going? And she didn't dare provoke Feng Sun. She could only change her question. I wonder if you've seen Miss Wushuang. Yu Minji raised an eyebrow. Who's that? I've never heard of or seen her before. What do you mean? You're not accusing me of being involved with her, are you? Let me tell you. I'm the only heir of the Dark Dynasty. You can't force me to marry someone from your family. I don't want her. And she was so angry that the blue veins on her forehead throbbed. How could such an unreasonable person be the only heir of the Dark Dynasty? Young Master Yu, please don't make fun of me. And she gritted her teeth. She was a spiritual overlord, yet she was being mocked like this. She felt that her pride had been trampled on the ground. Yu Minji said, I'm not kidding. I'm very serious. We're already out of the carriage. But are you still not going to let us go? Aunt Shi, I wouldn't dare, but... Yu Minji stared at Aunt Shi. He was a powerful spiritual overlord, and he had a noble status. That was why Yu Minji looked scary when he was displeased. Aunt Shi, it's just... Young Master Yu, I'm begging you. Just then, an impatient voice came from inside the carriage. Yu Minji, what are you doing out there? Are we leaving or not? A pair of fair, slender hands lifted the curtain, and a slender girl walked out. The girl was beautiful beyond description. It was none other than Feng Wu herself. When Feng Wu lifted the curtain, Aunt Shi stared at the carriage. She saw Feng Wu and the empty carriage behind her. No one could hide inside. Hua Wushuang wasn't there. Feng Wu frowned when she saw Aunt Shi. Aren't you Hua Wushuang's nanny? You were with her when she challenged me. Aunt Shi's eyebrows twitched when she saw Feng Wu. Yes, she replied coldly. Feng Wu said, What's this? Are you stopping us from going that way? Do you own this road? Aunt Shi's face turned livid at Feng Wu's rebuke, but she didn't want to lose her temper. In the end, she stepped aside and said, Miss Feng Wu, please. Feng Wu frowned at her and went back to the carriage. Yu Minji followed her in a hurry. Chapter 3562, Shocking News, 14. She's guarding the path leading to our Feng clan. Perhaps she's targeting you. Feng Sun had a headache. What did he mean by our Feng clan? Yu Minji was such a narcissist that he didn't know when to stop. Feng Sun kicked him. Watch your mouth. Yu Minji turned around and glared at him. What's wrong? I treat the Feng clan like my own family. What's wrong with that? Feng Sun said, Shut up. Just then Aunt Shi said, Miss Feng Wu. Feng Wu stopped and turned to look at Aunt Shi. Aunt Shi stared at Feng Wu, trying to figure out her strength. However, Feng Wu had the concealing jade. When Feng Wu wanted people to know how strong she was, she would put away the concealing jade, and when she didn't want people to know, she would put it on. Therefore, Aunt Shi couldn't see Feng Wu's cultivation level. Aunt Shi stared at Feng Wu. I wonder how strong Miss Feng Wu is now. Miss Wushuang is a level 8 spiritual king now. Aunt Shi tried to read Feng Wu's expression, but Feng Wu was as calm as ever. She nodded and said, Congratulations. Aunt Shi stared at Feng Wu. Miss Feng Wu, did you see Miss Wushuang today? Feng Wu frowned. Is she missing? Aunt Shi was speechless. Feng Wu said, She's become a level 8 spiritual king, but she's missing. It's been a few days since she competed with me. But does the Hua family want to blame me for Hua Wushuang's disappearance? Aunt Shi said, Of course not. Feng Wu nodded. That's good. If you do, I don't mind going to His Majesty for help. Aunt Shi couldn't help but think about what had happened between Duke Li and the Feng clan. It was obvious that His Majesty was biased toward Feng Wu. As Feng Wu and Aunt Shi talked, more and more people gathered around them. Feng Wu asked curiously, What's wrong with Hua Wushuang? Why is she suddenly missing? Did she elope with someone? Yu Minji cried out. Aunt Shi's expression was extremely ugly. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have provoked Feng Wu. This girl wasn't someone to be trifled with. And she didn't want the news of Hua Wushuang and Zhua Qingxi to get out because it would affect the reputation of the Hua family. In the end, Aunt Shi had no choice but to let Feng Wu and the others go. Fallen Star Yard. Yu Minji gloated. Oh my, I'm dying of laughter. Actually, Aunt Shi has caught the real culprit, but she just let us go. Feng Sun darted at him with a dirty look. Things are still at a stalemate. It's not over yet. Xiao Wu is still in danger. After a pause, Feng Sun frowned again. I think it's even more dangerous now. Yu Minji was shocked. You're making things up. Feng Sun said, I'm not. I'm talking about human nature. If I were Mrs. Hua, and the two families are fighting right now, what should I do? Yu Minji asked, what should you do? Feng Sun said, they used to be an alliance, so this is an internal conflict between them. Since they can't resolve it, they'll turn it into an external conflict. That way, they'll be united against the common enemy, right? Yu Minji's heart skipped a beat. You mean? Chapter 3563, Shocking News, 15. Feng Sun said, it's obvious that the Zhua family has been set up. If I were Mrs. Hua, I'd say that Hua Wushuang didn't do it. If everyone says that they saw it, she'll say that Hua Wushuang was impersonated. Yu Minji said, holy crap. Don't scare me. Feng Sun paced around the room anxiously and said, I hope it's not true, but why am I so flustered? You've never met the old lady of the Hua family, so you don't know what she's like. I've seen her before. She's like a viper with a kind smile. She'll fabricate evidence and say that Xiao Wu has disguised herself as Hua Wushuang. Then, she'll kill Feng Wu and everyone else in the Feng clan with that excuse. Yu Minji said, Although he didn't want to believe it, he somehow had a feeling that it was about to happen. At that thought, Yu Minji started running. He rushed into the inner courtyard. Xiao Wu, Xiao Wei. Yu Minji found a remote woodshed where they kept Hua Wushuang. Feng Wu put on the jade bracelets for Hua Wushuang, gave the latter a few shallow cuts, and dressed her in the bloody clothes. Hua Wushuang now looked the same as when Feng Wu rushed out of the Hua family. It was also what Feng Wu looked like when she rushed into the carriage. Yu Minji led Feng Wu out. Feng Wu looked at him in confusion. What's wrong? Yu Minji said, you've gone too far this time. Do you know? Yu Minji told Feng Wu what Feng Sun had told him and said in a serious tone, not only isn't the situation getting better, but the Hua family has also been given an excuse. Xiao Wu, don't panic. I'll take responsibility for this. As long as I'm alive, you won't be alone. Feng Wu looked at Yu Minji in surprise. Although Yu Minji was a silly boy, his concern for her was real. Feng Wu smiled. Don't worry. How can I take precautions in advance? How can there be a miracle if I don't have some trump cards? Yu Minji's eyes widened. So you had a plan. You knew from the beginning what Mrs. Hua would do at this point. Feng Wu nodded. If I hadn't expected it, I wouldn't have challenged her. There's no one to back me up. Yu Minji said in frustration, yes, there is. At least there's me. Feng Wu smiled. Got it? You're there for me. Like an innocent child, Yu Minji was delighted again. What about your trump card? Feng Wu pointed at the girl in front of her. Hua Wushuang? What kind of trump card is she? How are you going to use? At this moment, Hua Wushuang was in a daze. She was in a psychedelic state and looked like she was suffering from qi deviation. Feng Wu smiled. How can a trump card be called a trump card if you know what it is? Feng Sun arrived at that moment. Feng Wu waved at him and whispered something in his ear. Feng Sun nodded and carried Hua Wushuang out. Yu Minji was a little jealous. What about me? What can I do for you? Chapter 3564, Shocking News, 16. Yu Minji was a little jealous. What about me? What can I do for you? After some thought, Feng Wu said to Yu Minji, why don't you do it? Feng Sun can stay here and cultivate. Yu Minji said, no problem. But what can he achieve in such a short time? Is he going to become a spiritual overlord? Don't make me laugh. Before Feng Wu could say anything, Yu Minji waved at her. I'm off. He carried Hua Wushuang, who was in a daze, out of the door. Feng Sun looked at Feng Wu in confusion. Actually, Yu Minji is right. If I stay here and cultivate, I won't be able to achieve anything in a short time. I might as well. Feng Wu opened her hand and took out a few purple crystals. Feng Sun said, That's... Holy crap. Don't tell me they're blood source crystals. You have them. The blood source crystal was a peerless treasure for cultivation. Feng Wu smiled. It's what helped me recover my cultivation. Feng Wu had dropped to a level 4 spiritual king, but she recovered to level 6 and then rose to level 8. It was all thanks to the blood source crystals she had found in the treasure room. Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu. Legend has it that 10,000 top-grade spirit stones can only be exchanged for 1 blood source crystal. You have 4 now. Where did you get them? Did you rob someone? Feng Wu grinned at Feng Sun. Feng Sun asked, You really did? Feng Sun knew Feng Wu's habits very well. She would never leave a room empty-handed. If she got into the Hua manor, Feng Sun asked, Did you get them from the Hua family? Feng Wu nodded. Feng Sun said, The Hua family is really unlucky. You walked in there like a weasel in a hen's den. Feng Wu glanced at him and closed her palms. You don't want them, do you? Hey, don't. You're my dearest sister. Feng Sun begged her right away, and only then did he manage to get the 4 blood source crystals from her. I mean it. How did you get them? The Hua family should have put heavy guards on something as important as blood source crystals, right? Feng Wu smiled. They have, but there are loopholes. Feng Sun said, They'll be furious when they know that they've lost the blood source crystal. Feng Wu smiled. Of course they will. That old lady of the Hua family has saved these crystals for her own breakthrough. Almost all cultivators below the spiritual overlord stage use spiritual stones to make breakthroughs. Once we become spiritual overlords, it'll be much easier for us to cultivate with the crystals. Feng Sun said, That old lady is going to explode. You've taken their most precious thing. Feng Wu said, Who says it's their most precious thing? Feng Sun said, What? Feng Wu looked up to see Duan Chaoga running toward her. Xiao Wu. Seeing Feng Wu, Duan Chaoga wouldn't let go of her arm. I've been worried sick. Duan Chaoga held Feng Wu in her arms. I've finished what you told me to do. Feng Sun said, That's why I haven't seen you for the past 2 days. You've been working for little Feng Wu. He looked at Feng Wu curiously. What did you ask Chaoga to do for you this time? Feng Wu smiled. Heaven's secrets can't be divulged. Tisich. Feng Sun was so curious, but he also knew how tight-lipped Feng Wu was. If she didn't want to tell him, no one could make her. Chapter 3565. Shocking News, 17. Feng Wu took out a booklet from her ring and handed it to Duan Chaoga. Duan Chaoga looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment, then took the booklet and read the cover. True Flower Scripture. Feng Sun's eyes widened in surprise. The True Flower Scripture? If I remember correctly, it's an ultimate skill that only the direct descendants of the Hua family can master. Hua Wushuang is the only one practicing it now. Even Hua Wuji isn't qualified to learn it. This scripture teaches you the martial stances. I remember that Chaoga used to learn Unflower's cultivation method. Feng Wu nodded. She was giving the True Flower Scripture to Duan Chaoga because it was a martial technique. Together with what Chaoga had learned before, it would double the effect. Chaoga was over the moon. And this? Feng Wu handed Duan Chaoga a jar of black ointment. What's this? Duan Chaoga asked curiously. Feng Wu said, I found this body forge ointment in the Hua clan's vault. This one is all yours. And this is body forging technique. Duan Chaoga had both cultivation and martial techniques. Feng Wu decided to train her in both aspects from the very beginning so that she wouldn't be in a hurry at a later stage. Chaoga was about to put the things away when Feng Wu said, Don't wait. Go to your room and cultivate now. There's going to be a fierce battle in the near future, and I don't want you to get hurt. Duan Chaoge always listened to Feng Wu and would do whatever Feng Wu said. She nodded obediently, went back to her room, and started her cultivation. Feng Sun, on the other hand, stared at Feng Wu in astonishment. The body forge ointment, the true flower scripture, and the blood source crystals. Xiao Wu, you didn't empty the entire treasure room, did you? Feng Wu glanced at him. How did you know? Feng Sun asked. Really? Feng Wu nodded indifferently. Feng Sun was astonished. Feng Sun didn't know what to say. He felt sorry for the Hua clan. How many years had it taken them to gather so many treasures? And she had taken them all at once. They shouldn't have messed with you. Feng Sun finally realized that the girl wasn't the type to take things lying down. Just because she wasn't capable enough didn't mean that she would let them push her around. The Hua clan might suffer even more in the future. Feng Wu smiled. It's just the things the Hua clan brought to the imperial capital. The Hua clan has been around for thousands of years. Their flower valley must have a lot of good stuff. Feng Sun pointed at Feng Wu. You're after the flower valley as well? Feng Wu raised an eyebrow. I'll leave them alone if they don't come after me, but what if they insist on destroying my clan and my entire family? Feng Sun agreed. I hope they won't take it too hard. The girl wasn't just any ordinary girl. She was able to defeat the strong even though she was weaker than them. Who would have thought that a mere level 4 spiritual king could turn the two major clans against each other and turn the imperial capital upside down? Feng Sun said, I need to go cultivate now. If I don't work harder, Chaoge will catch up with me. As the successor of Unflower, Duan Chaoge was making rapid progress. And there was Xian Yi, who was about to make a breakthrough to the spiritual overlord stage. Yu Minji was already a spiritual overlord. Feng Sun grew anxious and dashed off after that. Chapter 3566, Shocking News, 18. Seeing how flustered he was, Feng Wu chuckled. So what if she had risked her life? As long as she could get stronger and make her family and friends stronger, everything would be worthwhile. Feng Wu began to sort through the things she had obtained from the treasure rooms. This time, she had cleared out 2 treasure rooms, and her storage space was filled to the brim. There was indeed a lot of good stuff. Apart from the elixirs and cultivation techniques, Feng Wu spotted a chest that was as tall as a grown man. She opened it to find steel needles that were almost a meter long. Feng Wu's eyes lit up as she studied the chest. She gave away all the resources she could spare and stored the rest in her ring. Just then, there was knocking on the door outside. Everyone in Fallen Star Yard was cultivating, and Feng Wu was the only one who didn't have anything better to do. Hence, she opened the gate with a wave of her hand. A few people were standing outside. Feng Wu recognized Feng Sang and Feng Yi. Feng Yi held the hands of 2 children, a boy and a girl. They were twins of 4 or 5 years old. Both were very pretty and cute as a button. Feng Sang was a little embarrassed to see Feng Wu. She said in a harsh tone, My sister said, thank you for what you did last time. Feng Wu asked, What are you referring to? Seeing that Feng Sang was going to snap, Feng Yi tugged at her sleeve, walked up to Feng Wu and said, My dear sister, it's all thanks to you that I'm able to deal with Duke Li's family. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today. Feng Yi asked around afterward and found out that her parents had been in the manor that day, but they were too scared to come out. They didn't even open the door. Only Feng Yi herself knew how desperate she felt. Feng Wu saw the sincerity in Feng Yi's limpid eyes, and she sounded very sincere. Feng Wu felt a little guilty. After inviting them to sit down in the courtyard, Feng Wu poured some tea for Feng Yi and said mildly, I'll be honest with you. In fact, I'm the reason that they've treated you like that. If the spiritual overlords aren't coming after me, you wouldn't have been incriminated. You'll still live happily in Duke Li's manor now. Feng Sang glanced at Feng Wu and snorted. So, you do know that. Feng Yi threw a stern look at Feng Sang, then turned to Feng Wu with a gentle look on her face. Taking Feng Wu's hand, Feng Yi smiled bitterly. Without you, I'd still be living in hell in the Duke's mansion. I'd wish I were dead. Only then did Feng Wu learn that Li Chaopan didn't like Feng Yi at all. Her mother-in-law was very strict with her, and her father-in-law didn't like her either. All the servants followed suit. If it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't have been able to see my children because my mother-in-law has been raising them in her courtyard. Feng Yi only felt much better after she told Feng Wu about her marriage. Without you, I would have had a nervous breakdown one day, and I could have hanged myself. Xiao Wu, I'm really grateful. Feng Wu could sense Feng Yi's gratitude from the bottom of her heart, but she didn't like it when other people thanked her. She preferred to argue with her enemies and make them frustrated. Feng Wu wasn't good at small talky, so she looked at the two children. Wait a minute. Chapter 3567. Shocking News, 19. Feng Wu's eyes lit up when she saw the twins. Feng Yi two children to greet Feng Wu. Feng Wu waved her hand and asked, "These two kids, can they start cultivating?" Feng Yi winced at the mention of it. She said with a sad look on her face, "Nyo was born with no cultivation talent. Duke Li has sent someone to examine her, and they said that Nyo could never cultivate, but because she was pretty, the old lady kept Nyo with her so that she could marry her off in the future. As for Debeo, I heard that he's one of the least talented types. Even if he cultivates, he can reach the spiritual master stage at most. But Li Chaopan still has other children as well. His favorite is Luo's child, a 7-year-old boy. He's very talented and has started cultivating at such a young age. He's already a spiritual master now." Feng Yi sounded pained. No wonder she had a hard life over there. His concubine's child is 7 years old now? You haven't been married for 7 years, have you? Feng Wu asked with a frown. Feng Yi nodded. Luo gave birth to Li Chaopan's eldest son before I married him. Feng Wu asked, "Why would you marry someone like that?" Feng Yi stopped talking right away. "When Lady Wang married you off, did she know that Li Chaopan already had a son by his concubine?" Feng Wu asked casually. Feng Sang interjected in a hurry. "Duke Li kept it a secret, and we only found out about it afterward. My mother didn't know at first." Feng Wu asked, "Really?" Feng Sang said, "I think so." Feng Wu smiled a little and didn't say another word. Because Feng Wu was the one who had started the whole thing, she felt a little guilty toward Feng Yi. Seeing the two children, Feng Wu wanted to make it up to them. She opened her palm to reveal 2 green pills. "Eat it." Feng Wu gave one to each child. The two children looked at Feng Yi timidly. Feng Yi knew that Feng Wu wouldn't harm them, so she said to the two children, "Aunt Wu gave it to you. Be good and eat it." The 2 kids stuffed the pills into their mouths. But Feng Sang frowned. "Don't eat it yet. Who knows what it is?" She then turned to Feng Wu. "What's this?" Feng Wu said lightly, "Good stuff." Feng Sang asked, "What good stuff? What if they kill the kids?" Feng Wu glanced at Feng Sang. "If you ate that when you were little, you wouldn't be so weak now." Feng Sang stared at Feng Wu and frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Feng Wu said, "If you ate that when you were little, you wouldn't have asked me what it meant." Feng Sang was speechless. Feng Sang was about to argue with Feng Wu when Feng Yi said, "Don't worry. Xiao Wu won't harm us. Debeo, Nyo, eat your pills." The two children swallowed the pills. The pill melted as soon as it entered their mouths. The energy soon spread through their system. Feng Sang asked nervously, "Are they going to be all right? Feng Wu, what did you give them?" Feng Wu didn't speak. But soon, the 2 kids began to react. "They're sweating." Feng Yi saw the sweat on Debeo's forehead. When she touched it, she saw that her palms were covered with sweat, which was black in color. Then, the same thing happened to Nyo. Chapter 3568. Shocking News, 20. Feng Sang had a vague idea. She looked up and stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. Feng Wu said, "Take them back and let them rest well. They'll feel refreshed after they wake up and take a bath. The filth will be washed away." Feng Yi followed Feng Wu's instructions and carried the twins away. But Feng Sang didn't leave. She kept staring at Feng Wu in astonishment. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at her. "Why are you still here?" Feng Sang said, "Tell me the truth. What did you feed them?" Feng Wu said, "Poison." Feng Sang stared at Feng Wu. "You won't do that." Feng Wu said, "If you have time to keep an eye on me, go back and take good care of them." Feng Sang had a feeling, but she wasn't sure, so she had to keep it to herself. "I'll go back and take care of them. If anything happens to them, I'll make you pay." Feng Wu waved her hand impatiently. Feng Sang ran off as fast as she could. Feng Wu thought, "I still have quite a few cleansing pills from the Hua clan." If Feng Sang had been nicer, Feng Wu would have given her one, but she just had to be so grumpy. Feng Sang ran back home to find the two kids sweating profusely. She was a little frightened, so she went to look for Feng Yanfeng. Feng Yanfeng wasn't here, but Lady Wang was. Lady Wang rushed over as soon as she heard what had happened. No matter how an adult changed, their nature would remain the same. Lady Wang had always been a self-interested person. Although Feng Wu was on friendly terms with Lady Wang's family, Lady Wang was still very alarmed. "What's wrong with my dear grandchildren? Did Feng Wu do something to them?" Immediately, Lady Wang tried to blame everything on Feng Wu. Feng Sang explained in a hurry. "It doesn't have to be poison." Lady Wang didn't hear any of that. She rushed over to the two kids and saw that they were covered in black sweat. She already had a problem with Feng Wu. "Debeo Nyonyo, my dearest babies?" Holding them, Lady Wang wanted to take revenge on Feng Wu. Feng Yi stopped her right away. "Mother, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Wu said they'll be fine after they wake up and take a bath." Lady Wang flared up. "Of course, it's a bad thing. Feel their foreheads. They're burning up. What kind of mother are you? How can you speak up for an outsider? Get Feng Wu here." Feng Yi pushed Lady Wang toward the door. Lady Wang said, "What are you doing? What's this?" Feng Yi pushed Lady Wang out of the room, slammed the door shut and locked it. Lady Wang banged on the door. "Feng Yi, do you have any idea what you're doing? Open up. Open this door right now." However, Feng Yi didn't listen to Lady Wang this time. Feng Sang looked at Feng Yi in admiration. "Sister, you're so brave." Feng Yi shook her head. "Xiao Sang, you're still young and haven't experienced the hardships of life. You won't understand a lot of things, and you won't be able to see through other people like I used to. But after what happened, I finally realized something. Mothers aren't born to be kind to their children, and some are snobbish. Actually, our mother knew that Li Chaopan had a concubine's son before we were married, and she even knew that he wasn't a decent person." Chapter 3569. Shocking News, 21. "But she still kept it from me and insisted that I marry him. She did it all for the sake of the Duke Li's status and prestige. Over the years, our parents have borrowed a lot of money from Duke Li. You don't know this, do you? Because of that, Duke Li's family doesn't see me as a human being anymore. Our parents were at home on that day when I was sent back. They were afraid that Li Chaopan would ask them to pay back their debts, so they kept their doors shut. What kind of parents are they? Do you think there's anyone in our family that can lead this family? Xiao Wu is our only hope now. She's the one who can bring glory to our clan. She's a genius. Why do you have to go against her? After hearing everything you told me, I think Xiao Wu is the one who's on the right, whereas our family has never been reasonable. Not only that, but they've also been picking on Feng Wu's family. Xiao Sang, think about it. Isn't that true? Therefore, I choose to trust Xiao Wu this time. I'm sure she won't harm me." Feng Yi stared at Feng Sang and stressed each word. Feng Sang took her words to heart and sighed. "Actually, I know perfectly well that Feng Wu is on the right. I just can't get over what I'm feeling. Feng Wu was a genius when she was little. I wouldn't have reacted differently if she had remained that way, but when she became useless and I thought I could defeat her, she rose again. Envy is the worst feeling. Of course, I've figured it out now. Feng Wu is so powerful that I can never catch up with her. I can't even see how high up she is now and have given up on competing with her. So don't worry. I won't be jealous of her anymore. Once I stop comparing myself with her, I can see how capable she is. Feng Yi nodded. That's why our mother is wrong. We can't follow her blindly. We should have our own opinions. Feng Sang said, yes. Outside, Lady Wang had no idea what decision her two daughters had made. If she did, she would probably be furious. It seemed forever before the two children woke up. After Feng Yi cleaned them up, they all put on fluffy sleeping gowns, which made them look even more adorable. Wait! Feng Sang's eyes widened when she examined them. What's wrong? Feng Yi was still concerned. Why do I feel spiritual essence in them? Wait, let me feel them again. Instinctively, Feng Sang thought that she was mistaken, but when she examined them again, she realized in astonishment that there really was spiritual essence. They, level 3 spiritual masters. Feng Sang almost couldn't stand still. She stared at Feng Yi and said in disbelief, both Debeo and Nyonyo are level 3 spiritual masters. What? Feng Yi was so shocked. What did you say? Level 3 spiritual masters. Aren't they useless and can't cultivate? Feng Sang said, but they really are level 3 spiritual masters. Wait here. I'll go get our father. Feng Sang opened the door and dashed off after that. When Feng Sang opened the door, Lady Wang was finally able to come in. She rushed into the room and smacked Feng Yi on the forehead. You traitor! Are you going to ignore your mother now? How dare you shut your mother out? Chapter 3570, Lit Genius, 1. Lady Wang went on and on, but Feng didn't react at all. Because she was still immersed in what Feng Sang said. Level 3 spiritual masters. Level 3 spiritual masters. How is this possible? Did you hear me? Seeing that Feng Yi's mind had wandered off, Lady Wang smacked her on the head with all her strength. That woke Feng Yi up. Mother! Feng Yi frowned at Lady Wang. Lady Wang glared back at her. I'm talking to you. Can't you hear me? What's wrong with you? You went to Fallen Star Yard, and you're acting strangely. What did Feng Wu do to you? Why won't you listen to your mother? Feng Wu? Green pills? Level 3 spiritual masters. Feng Yi turned around and stared at her two children with twinkling eyes. Just then Feng Sang arrived with Feng Yanfeng, and Feng Yiran arrived in a hurry as well. Father, look, see if they're level 3 spiritual masters. Feng Sang pushed Feng Yanfeng in front of the two kids. The two children looked at their grandpa with their big innocent eyes. Their grandfather wasn't very friendly to them, so they were a little scared. Debeo, Nyonyo, don't be afraid. I'm just checking on you. Don't worry. Feng Yanfeng wouldn't believe it when Feng Sang told him about it. Who was she kidding? The two kids were hopeless. One had little talent and the other one had no talent at all. Feng Yanfeng decided that he would find a chance to marry Feng Yi off. As for the two kids, he would leave them in the Feng clan for the rest of their lives. Feng Yanfeng examined them without much hope. He had thought that he could just give them a quick examination so that Feng Sang wouldn't get too excited. As it turned out, he really discovered something. Lady Wang was still complaining to Feng Yanfeng about how disobedient Feng Yi was. She was still talking non-stop when Feng Yanfeng bellowed, "Shut up!" Lady Wang stared at Feng Yanfeng in disbelief. Are you scolding me? Feng Yanfeng didn't have time for this and bellowed again, just shut up. He was genuinely angry. Lady Wang had always bullied the weak and feared the strong. When Feng Yanfeng flared up, she cringed and hid behind Feng Yi. She didn't dare to utter a word. Feng Yanfeng looked amazed as he murmured, "It's real? How can this be? Is it that amazing?" Feng Yi went up to him. "Father." Feng Yanfeng said, "They're only 3.5 years old, but they're already level 3 spiritual masters. That's incredible." The kids hadn't even started cultivating yet, and even if they had, they would have to work on strengthening their bodies first. No one had ever reached the spiritual master stage before they were 3 or 4. Feng Yanfeng asked in a hurry, "What happened? Why is this happening all of a sudden?" Feng Yi asked with tears in her eyes. Father, is this good news? Feng Yanfeng's eyes widened. If that's not good news, what is? This is great news. The Feng clan is going to have 2 geniuses. Do you still remember Li Chaopan's eldest son? He was a level 3 spiritual master when he was 7, and he was already considered very talented. Your kids are already level 3 spiritual masters now. Chapter 3571, Lit Genius, 2. Feng Yanfeng urged. So, what happened? Why are they like this all of it? Sudden. She then told Feng Yanfeng about the 2 green pills that Feng Wu had given the kids. Feng Sang added, Feng Xiaoqi is going to be a spiritual king soon. Feng Yanfeng was astonished. He stared at Feng Sang. Feng Sang nodded. I ran into Feng Xiaoqi a few days ago. He said it himself. He's 1 step away from the spiritual king stage. And there's Duan Chaoga. She's almost a spiritual king. Feng Yanfeng gasped. Feng Wu was surrounded by geniuses. Did Feng Wu give them the legendary dragon marrow cleansing pill? It's the only thing that can turn a talentless person into a good cultivator. But such a precious thing. Lady Wang was confused. Is it very precious? Feng Yanfeng said, Of course. A treasure that can turn an inferior endowment into a spiritual one is priceless. You can't buy it with spiritual stones. I didn't expect that girl to be so generous. Lady Wang, however, was suspicious. Is it a trap? Feng Yi said in a hurry, No, Xiao Wu is kind to us. Lady Wang glared at Feng Yi. What did that girl do to you to make you flatter her? Feng Yanfeng mumbled, I'd flatter her if she gave me the dragon marrow cleansing pill. Lady Wang looked at Feng Yanfeng suspiciously. What did you say, my lord? Feng Yanfeng said, Nothing. Lady Wang said, I have a feeling that girl isn't up for good. There must be a trap. Feng Yanfeng said, I'll talk to the elders. Since Feng Yi has divorced, her children are the Feng clan's children. Feng Yanfeng went to the forbidden area at the back of the mountain himself. There was silence. Everyone silently looked at the 2 children. Feng Sang was in a dilemma. Dragon transformation marrow cleansing pill. Feng Wu gave away 2 such pills. 2. She casually gave it to the 2 children. Feng Sang thought that if she had one, she would love to get her hands on it. Feng Sang and Feng Yuan looked at each other and saw the most intense desire in each other's eyes. Feng Yuan said, Do you think she has more? Feng Sang said in frustration, Even if she did, she wouldn't give it to us. After all, we've offended her before. Feng Yuan lowered his voice. That's all in the past. She's so powerful now, and she's friends with such amazing people. I don't think she'll hold it against a nobody like us. Do you? Feng Sang said, In that case, let's go and ask her for help. Although the 2 of them spoke in low voices, Lady Wang had heard everything clearly. She exploded. She smacked both of her children. What are you 2 talking about? Ask Feng Wu for help? You're going to beg Feng Wu for some pills? How dare you? Lady Wang was infuriated. Feng Sang got angry too. She's our sister. Lady Wang said, She's only your cousin. Feng Sang said, Fine, she's my cousin, but that's close enough. I used to be close to her when we were young, but you kept telling us that Feng Wu was stealing our cultivation resources. We only became estranged because of you. Lady Wang couldn't believe what she had just heard. She was so angry that she wanted to hit Feng Sang, but Feng Sang ran up to Feng Yuan and hid behind him. Chapter 3572, Little Genius, 3. Lady Wang was infuriated. Don't forget that Feng Wu killed your sister. Feng Yuan looked at Lady Wang. Mother, I've been meaning to tell you. Lu was the one who tried to kill Feng Wu first, and she kept doing it. Lady Wang said, But Feng Wu killed her. Feng Yuan said, Feng Wu didn't kill her. Lu fell down herself. Lady Wang was furious. Are you trying to give me a heart attack? Feng Yuan and Feng Sang, who had been united by her side, no longer saw Feng Wu as their enemy. They even wanted to betray her. Feng Sang said, "Mother, why don't you understand? Feng Wu is the Feng clan's only hope now. We should." Lady Wang was infuriated. "I don't care. I just want Feng Wu dead." Feng Sang and Feng Yuan looked at each other, their eyes filled with pain. His mother had been married into the Feng clan for so long. Did she still not treat the Feng clan as her own family? Just then they heard footsteps outside. Who ignores the benefit of the Feng clan and wants Feng Wu dead? The one who spoke was Elder Grain. The other two elders of the restricted area were cultivating and busy dealing with the incoming spiritual overlords. Therefore, only Elder Grain came this time. The moment Elder Grain arrived, the temperature instantly dropped. Elder Grain stared at Lady Wang with his cold eyes. Lady Wang felt a chill run down her spine, and her body went limp. She almost fainted. Elder Grain stared at Feng Yanfeng and said coldly, "You haven't divorced your wife yet." Lady Wang dropped to her knees. Feng Sang begged, "Elder Grain, mother, will repent. She'll repent." What she said was unintentional. Elder Grain glanced at Feng Sang and said nothing. He walked in front of the two children and carefully examined them. Finally, a smile appeared on his face. "Good." Feng Yanfeng was thrilled. "Elder Grain, are they really level 3 spiritual masters?" Elder Grain nodded. "They're more than that. In the next few days it's very likely that they'll advance to level 4. Xiao Wu really is the hope of our clan." In the end, Elder Grain looked at Feng Yi. "Are you willing to let us raise these two children in the forbidden area at the back of the mountain?" Feng Yi had seen Elder Grain when she was young and had also been examined by him. Back then, Elder Grain was disappointed and said that this child had little talent. Let her be an ordinary person. Feng Yi nodded. "Of course." She quickly got the two children to kneel down and greet Elder Grain. Lady Wang watched helplessly as Elder Grain led the two future prodigies away. She felt extremely aggrieved. Feng Sang gave Lady Wang one last look. "Mother, I advise you to be kind. If you still want to go against Xiao Wu, you can do it yourself. I won't follow you blindly anymore. I'm old enough to know what's right and what's wrong." With that, Feng Sang turned around and left. Feng Yuan walked up to Lady Wang and gave her a silent look. In the end, he said, "Mother, what happened to Lu should teach you a lesson. Just think about it." Feng Yuan left after that. Lady Wang watched them leave in silence. In the end, she burst into tears. Seeing Lady Wang's reaction, Feng Yi went up to her and knelt down beside her. She heaved a long sigh. "Mother, it's time for you to be reasonable." Chapter 3573. Where are the treasures? 1. Meanwhile in the Hua clan. Mrs. Hua sat quietly in the ink-cleansing hall, holding the prayer beads in her hand and counting them one by one with her eyes closed. No one dared to enter the house, let alone disturb him. Everyone was perfectly silent and trembling in fear, afraid that the old lady would kill them all in anger. Outside the hall stood the eldest Master Hua and Hua Wing, his brother, as well as their wives and children. Everyone in the Hua family was gathered outside the door, waiting for the old lady's instructions. The old lady was the backbone of the clan. Once she was gone, the Hua family wouldn't know what to do. Master Hua was the most anxious because the one in trouble was his daughter, Hua Wushuang. It took him some painstaking effort to persuade the Zhou family to leave. At first, the Zhou family wouldn't leave, but Master Hua told them that he would hand Hua Wushuang over to the Zhou family when he found her. Only then did the Zhou family leave reluctantly. "Have you found Wushuang?" Master Hua asked anxiously when he saw Aunt Shi. Aunt Shi shook her head at him. Master Hua was instantly enraged. "What have you been doing? How could you let Wushuang do such a thing? Now, you actually can't find her." Aunt Shi had just been humiliated by Yuminji, and now that she was back, she had to listen to this. How frustrating. "Aunt Shi, come in." "Mrs. Hua's indifferent voice came from inside. Aunt Shi knew that the old lady was in an extremely gloomy mood. She carefully entered and quietly closed the door before walking to the old lady. How did it go? Mrs. Hua stared at Aunt Shi. Aunt Shi's expression was ugly as she shook her head. I couldn't find Miss Wushuang. I've searched everywhere, but there's no sign of her. It's as if she suddenly disappeared from this world. Mrs. Hua said, she has to be somewhere. And she said, but I really... Mrs. Hua said, unless she's hiding somewhere, or someone is hiding her. And she said, then do you think she's been hidden against her will? Could it be the doing of the Zhou family? Mrs. Hua shook her head. No. If the Zhou family had found her before us, Zhou Ming and his wife wouldn't have acted that way. They're just average actors. Mrs. Hua pondered for a moment and said to Aunt Shi, did you encounter anything strange? Aunt Shi shook her head. Mrs. Hua asked, not even a little? Aunt Shi thought for a moment, then remembered Yu Minji's carriage and Feng Wu. So, she told Mrs. Hua about it. Feng Wu. Mrs. Hua frowned. Aunt Shi said, Yu Minji and Feng Sun were there, and they took her home in a carriage. It seemed fine. Mrs. Hua asked Aunt Shi for more details, such as Feng Wu's clothes and accessories, and Aunt Shi answered all of them. Mrs. Hua thought about it but still couldn't figure out what was wrong with Feng Wu. However, she felt that something was amiss. Go to the treasure room and get the self-questioning mirror, Mrs. Hua told. Aunt Shi nodded and left quickly. The self-questioning mirror was a magical mirror. It was Mrs. Hua's habit to ask the mirror if she was indecisive. After Aunt Shi left, a name kept appearing in Mrs. Hua's mind. Feng Wu. She finally understood what was wrong. Rumor had it that Jun Linyuan and Feng Wu were close, and even Mrs. Hua had seen it with her own eyes. Chapter 3574, Where are the Treasures, 2. Mrs. Hua hadn't kept the Empress Dowager's promise of marriage a secret, nor had the Empress Dowager. However, Feng Wu had been too quiet. How could she not do anything? Did Feng Wu do something about what happened between Hua Wushuang and Zhou Qingxi? That was what Mrs. Hua thought. She immediately started investigating. But there was no trace at all. The incident between Hua Wushuang and Zhou Qingxi was flawless. Everyone witnessed Hua Wushuang attacking Zhou Qingxi with their own eyes. Wait. Mrs. Hua's heart skipped a beat. She knew her own medical skills very well. She was very confident in helping Zhou Qingxi with reattaching his body part because she had done it before. Back then, she had caught her husband cheating. In a fit of anger, she cut off his member. Later on, she personally reattached it. That was why she tried to treat Zhou Qingxi. But Zhou Qingxi was dead. That shouldn't have happened. Was something wrong with him before that? Mrs. Hua frowned. Actually, when she examined Zhou Qingxi's dead body, she didn't find anything wrong with it, but some hidden injuries could be manifested after death. No, she had to check Zhou Qingxi's body again. At this thought, Mrs. Hua stood up and was about to go to the Zhou family. But soon she came up with a brilliant idea. What if Zhou Qingxi had no internal injuries? No, she had to make one up. Hadn't Zhou Qingxi and Feng Wu had an argument before? Mrs. Hua decided that she could accuse Feng Wu of being the culprit and say that Zhou Qingxi had died because Feng Wu had injured him. This wasn't enough. How was she going to pin more blame on Feng Wu? Wasn't Feng Wu a semi-divine medicine refiner? If that were the case, she must have a drug that could control people's minds. Mrs. Hua would say that Feng Wu had drugged Hua Wushuang, which was why Wushuang had lost her mind. Wushuang acted like a mad person when she ran out. What about the motive? It couldn't be more obvious. If Feng Wu wanted to have Jun Linyuan to herself, she only had to kill Hua Wushuang and drag the Zhou family into the mess. That way, she would be the winner. Mrs. Hua was shocked by her own brilliant idea. How could she be so smart? What if Feng Wu wouldn't admit it? Well, Mrs. Hua would make sure that Feng Wu had to admit everything. It should be Feng Wu's honor to be the scapegoat for the Hua clan. Mrs. Hua decided to leave Feng Wu's body intact to show her kindness. Just as Mrs. Hua was happily imagining all the plans in her mind, and she rushed in like a gust of wind. And she had always been a steady person. When had she ever been so flustered? Thump. And she broke through a door and flew in. Mrs. Hua looked up and stared at her with a frown. Before she could get up from the ground, she was already shouting, "Ma'am, you have to take a look at the treasure room now." Mrs. Hua's heart sank. She had a very bad feeling. Quickly. And she was so anxious that she almost couldn't think straight. Mrs. Hua didn't say anything else. She stood up and rushed to the treasure room. The treasure room was built underground, and there were formations inside and outside. Only 2 people could come and go freely. One was Mrs. Hua, and the other was Aunt Shi. Of course, Aunt Shi was only allowed to enter after receiving Mrs. Hua's order and obtaining the password. The room used a dynamic password that would be changed automatically every 2 hours. Chapter 3575. Where are the treasures? 3. This was the spirit formation that Mrs. Hua had set up. She had always been proud of it. Mrs. Hua and Aunt Shi rushed toward the treasury. There was a group of people waiting in Mrs. Hua's courtyard. Her both sons were there. Seeing that Mrs. Hua had left in a hurry, everyone followed her, afraid that they would miss something. Hua Wuji held her mother's hand. "Mother, this doesn't seem right. Grandmother has always been strong and steady, but now she's staggering. And there's Aunt Shi. She's usually so arrogant and only cares about Grandma and Hua Wushuang, but just now she ran into the door in a panic. Mother, why am I so flustered?" "That's the direction of the treasure room," her mother said seriously. "When we came to the imperial capital, we brought many treasures from the Flower Valley. Many are all extremely precious things." Soon, they arrived at the treasure room. Mrs. Hua used the dynamic password to enter. And she didn't dare to enter, but in the end, she braced herself and followed Mrs. Hua while the others stayed outside. Mrs. Hua went in alone. When she saw that the huge treasure room was empty, she was dumbfounded. There was nothing left. The shelves were all empty. Mrs. Hua was already using a walking stick. However, at this moment, she was walking as fast as she could and rushed out to open all kinds of hidden mechanisms. The first hidden compartment was empty. The second hidden compartment was empty. The third hidden compartment was empty. The mica energy, self-questioning mirror, blood source crystals, dragon transformation marrow cleansing pills. All the treasures disappeared overnight. The Flower Valley had accumulated the treasures for many years. How could they be gone? Mrs. Hua almost fainted. What's going on here? Where's everything? Why are they all gone? Mrs. Hua glared at Aunt Shi viciously and questioned her. Answer me. Mrs. Hua whipped Aunt Shi with her hardwood walking stick. Speak. Aunt Shi was sent flying and hit the wooden shelf with a bang. She was dizzy, and blood dripped from the corner of her mouth. But Aunt Shi didn't dare to fight back at all. She crawled over silently and knelt in front of Mrs. Hua. I really don't know. After I sent the mica energy back last night, I left. Because you have the password, I thought no one would approach. Mrs. Hua was very confident in her formation, and the treasure room was underground, so she only sent 2 experts to guard it. Come out. Those 2 experts were both elders at the spiritual overlord stage. At this moment, they were kneeling in front of Mrs. Hua. Speak. Mrs. Hua roared. However, Mrs. Hua couldn't get any useful information from them. Because what they told Mrs. Hua was exactly what Aunt Shi said. From the moment Aunt Shi left until just now, no one had entered. That's impossible. Mrs. Hua frowned. Could there be an invisibility spell in this world? Who the hell was it? As for the invisibility spell, Master Phoenix did have such a spell, but no mortals could use it. As for invisibility tools, suddenly, Mrs. Hua's eyes flickered. Chapter 3576, Change of Plan, 1. The Zhou family. Legend had it that a powerful cultivator had received a feather from Master Phoenix. Later, he used the feather to make an invisibility cloak. From then on, the cloak was used in the mortal world. Mrs. Hua had heard from Zhou Chengfeng a few years ago that he had obtained this cloak. Could it be? Zhou Chengfeng. One needed the dynamic password to enter or leave the room. Even with an invisibility cloak, one still had to open the door. Mrs. Hua studied the door seriously. After a long time, she really managed to figure it out. Since she entered last night till now, the door had only opened 3 times. The first time was when she entered the room the night before. The second time was when she entered the room just now. The third time was when Mrs. Hua entered. And someone had gone out 3 times. She left the room twice. Mrs. Hua had never left the room since she came in, so that extra time, who was it? The only explanation now was that the other party was wearing an invisibility cloak and followed behind She. After She left, they stole all the treasures. At the thought of this, Mrs. Hua gripped the walking stick tightly with her withered hand, and anger burned in her eyes. They couldn't have followed She the second time because by then, the room was already empty. Therefore, after eliminating all the impossibilities, the only possibility left was that person followed She into the treasure room the night before. Last night, Mrs. Hua remembered that not long after She left, the old man from the Zhou family followed her in. The Zhou family. The Zhou family. Mrs. Hua was so angry that her chest heaved. She was discussing a collaboration with old Master Zhou, but the old man actually set her up. Mrs. Hua recalled that when she was young, Zhou Chengfeng courted her and swore he would marry no one but her. But now, he was so vicious that he even stole from the Hua family's treasure vault. Was the Zhou family so deaf now? Mrs. Hua wanted to question Zhou Chengfeng, but she controlled herself in the end. Calm down. What if it wasn't him? Although all the evidence pointed to him, what if it wasn't him? Mrs. Hua still wanted to work with the Zhou family. She took a deep breath and walked out of the treasure room, closing the door solemnly. And she also walked out. The others rushed over. Her eldest son asked, "Mother, did something happen to the treasure room?" The head of the Hua family was Mrs. Hua, and she was the one who called all the shots. Her son had no actual power and listened to everything his mother said. Mrs. Hua shook her head lightly. "I just lost something. It's fine. Go back to your own business." Did he just lose a little something? Hua Wuji frowned suspiciously. The old lady was such a calm person, but she lost a shoe while she was running just then. A little something? Hua Wuji didn't believe it. After Mrs. Hua returned to her room, she immediately summoned someone and gave him some instructions. The person ran toward the Zhou family like a gust of wind. In the fallen star yard. When Yu Minji returned, he ran to Feng Wu in excitement. Feng Wu glanced at him. "You're back." Feng Wu had made another breakthrough while she was cultivating, and she had to thank the Hua family for the resources. Otherwise, her body forging technique wouldn't have been able to improve so quickly. Feng Wu had just finished cultivating when Yu Minji returned. Chapter 3577, Change of Plan, 2. It's done. Yu Minji gloated. The Hua family is looking for Hua Wushuang, and so is the Zhou family. I put her in the Zhou family's house, and sure enough, the spiritual overlord of the Zhou family found her first and took her away. The spiritual overlord of the Zhou family is quite powerful. He's at least at level 5. They call him Elder Lei. According to the convention of the Zhenwu Empire, one could be called an elder once they reach the spiritual overlord stage. Yu Minji said, "By the way, didn't you ask my elder to put the stuff in the Zhou family's house and frame them? Don't worry, my elder has done everything he can for you. I guarantee that the Hua family will be able to trace it back to the Zhou family." Feng Wu thought about the details and decided that she hadn't missed anything, so she said, "Now, it's time for the big show." Yu Minji was thrilled. What's next? Tell me. What Feng Wu asked him to do was random. Yu Minji still hadn't figured out what Feng Wu was up to. Feng Wu had 4 groups of people that she could use at the moment. The first was Emperor Wu's men, who were 5 senior spiritual overlords. If it weren't for the fact that she was in a life-and-death situation, Feng Wu wouldn't have used them, because they would tell Emperor Wu everything she did. It wasn't that Feng Wu didn't trust Emperor Wu, but that she didn't want to owe Emperor Wu a favor. No one wanted to owe an emperor a favor. The second group was from Northern Feng Mansion, but because most of them had been taken away by Northern Feng General, only a few people were left to guard the mansion. Feng Wu didn't want to use them unless she had to. The third group was Yu Minji's men. Yu Minji only brought 3 of his elders with him, but they were all at the peak of the spiritual overlord stage and were capable of fighting. The fourth group was the 3 elders of the Feng clan. Those 3 elders in the forbidden area were all that the clan had left. Just then, Little Phoenix sent a report to Feng Wu. Xiao Wu, they've found out about the treasure room. That old woman already knows about the theft. You were so right. She's suspecting the Zhou family and has sent people to the Zhou family to check if they have the treasures. You have to be careful. From what that old woman said, she really wants to frame you. She wants to use your status as a semi-divine medicine refiner and say that you poisoned Hua Wushuang. That's why she did such a thing. Motive? She says you want to steal Jun Linyuan from Hua Wushuang. Hey, don't scold me. I didn't say that. Feng Wu went back to the Feng clan, but Little Phoenix stayed there. Because it could become invisible now, it had been lying next to the flower pot in Mrs. Hua's room, reporting to Feng Wu. How did I know that? That old woman and Hua Wushuang's father were discussing how to scheme against you and completely destroy the Feng clan. Alright. I'll keep an eye on her for you. Hey, the scout is back. He said that he did find something belonging to the Hua family's treasure room in the Zhou family's house. It's confirmed that Zhou Chengfeng has betrayed the old lady. Also, they already know that Hua Wushuang is imprisoned by the Zhou family. The old lady is pacing around right now. She seems to be thinking of a way to deal with the Zhou family. Your crisis isn't over yet. Chapter 3578, Change of Plan, 3. Little Phoenix had done a great job this time. It could hide its aura after turning invisible. Unless its spiritual power fluctuated, even someone as powerful as Mrs. Hua wouldn't be able to discover its existence. Hey, the old lady seems to have thought of a solution. She's instructing her son to attack the Feng clan tonight and destroy you all. The old lady also admits that Jun Linyuan likes you. He'll be furious if they kill you, so she decides to destroy the Feng clan and frame the Zhou family. What excuse? The influential families are all very well informed. The old lady already knew that you destroyed Zhou Qinghuan's true phoenix blood. She's going to use this as an excuse to frame the Zhou family. Feng Wu said, keep an eye on the old lady. Little Phoenix agreed. It broke out in cold sweat for Feng Wu. It had a feeling that Feng Wu's original plan wasn't like the old lady's. It wondered if Feng Wu had a backup plan. Meanwhile, in Fallen Star Yard. Seeing Feng Wu's solemn look, Yu Minji was worried. He waved his hand in front of Feng Wu. Feng Wu, are you all right? Feng Wu was communicating with Little Phoenix through brainwaves. As far as Yu Minji was concerned, Feng Wu was in a trance. It's a little troublesome. Feng Wu stood up, put her hands behind her back, and paced around the yard. She had more than 10 spiritual overlords, but the Hua family had at least 15, and more were coming. This was because there were still many spiritual overlords gathered in the imperial capital. These people were all waiting for an opportunity to kill Feng Wu. If the Hua clan contacted these people, as smart as the old lady was, she would definitely try to use those people. If Mrs. Hua personally took action, the Feng clan would be in danger. Feng Wu looked around the house and studied every blade of grass, every tree, every flower. Why did some people want others dead? Why couldn't they live a peaceful life? It was a little different from the original plan, but she could modify it a little. Sitting on the swing, Feng Wu closed her eyes and tried to think of a solution. The Hua clan, the Zhou family, and all those spiritual overlords. Plans popped up in Feng Wu's head one after another, but they were all rejected. Time was running out. The Hua clan would make their move tonight. 1 spiritual sage and 15 spiritual overlords. No, it was very likely that the Zhou family would also take advantage of the situation. In that case, 2 spiritual saints and 30 spiritual overlords would all come to the Feng clan. Standing on the roof, Feng Wu watched the children play in the Feng clan. She saw the teenagers fooling around, Granny Zhao washing clothes, Uncle Chiu fixing the carriage, and, if she couldn't stop them, the Feng clan would disappear from this world forever. Just then Feng Xiaoqi ran out. Sister, what's wrong? Why do you look so worried? Rungwu, Lan isi ten na Ramui mat tin hua Ramui anami luo Ramui na joined forces to attack the Feng clan. They only thought that Feng Wu was being hunted down by the spiritual overlords. Kiddo, are you in trouble now? Holding her sword, the white fairy stood on the wall and looked down at Feng Wu. Feng Wu glanced at her and said, I saw Chu Tianxiao. What? The arrogant white fairy jumped off the wall and ran up to Feng Wu. What did you say? Say it again. Where is he? Tell me now. Feng Wu snapped. Didn't you sell yourself to me for 100 years? Protect me for 100 years first. Chapter 3579, Change of Plan 4. The white fairy said, Do you have a death wish? The white fairy didn't care about anything else, but Chu Tianxiao was a thorn in her side, and no one could disrespect him. Feng Wu said grumpily, Fine, fine. I won't bring it up again. The white fairy said, Tell me. Feng Wu said, I can find out about my 3rd senior brother, but you have to help me with something first. The white fairy stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu shrugged. My entire clan is going to be wiped out. Do you TN1 and K1 still care about your love life? The white fairy agreed. Go ahead. Feng Wu whispered something in her ear. The white fairy frowned. Feng Wu smiled. If you don't do it, I may never live to see the sun again. If that happens, you'll probably never see my 3rd senior brother. The white fairy said grumpily, That's all I'm going to do for you. I can't do anything else. I haven't recovered much yet. Feng Wu immediately said, All right. As soon as Feng Wu talked to the white fairy, Little Phoenix prompted her. Xiao Wu, have you thought of something? The old lady is really going to destroy the Feng clan tonight. Feng Wu said, Don't worry. I have my own plan. Hearing that, Little Phoenix was a little relieved, but it was still a little confused. What idea had the girl come up with? Yu Minji asked Feng Wu, What happened? Feng Wu then told him about how the old lady was going to attack the Feng clan with all her might. Yu Minji was astonished. Yu Minji asked, If the Hua family wants to take down the Feng family, what about the Zhou family? Will they join hands? Feng Wu said, That's possible. Yu Minji said, So? Sister, is that true? Feng Xiaoqi didn't emo about it before, but he was shocked now. Feng Wu looked at Feng Xiaoqi and nodded solemnly. Feng Wu didn't plan to let her family know if the battle hadn't come to the Feng clan, but now, she had to inform them in advance. What should we do now? Xiaoqi wasn't the only one who heard it. The rest of the family came out as well. Qiuling, Granny Zhao, Uncle Chiu, Chaoga, Feng Sun. Feng Wu said, Don't worry. I've figured it out. We'll be fine. But what choice did they have? The others only thought that Feng Wu was comforting them. According to Feng Wu, there were 2 spiritual saints and over 30 spiritual overlords. How were they supposed to fight this war? It would be much faster to just lie down and accept their fate. Feng Sun wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end he said, Let's tell my father. He's a spiritual saint. Feng Wu turned to Feng Sun with a stern look on her face. No. Feng Sun said, But? Feng Wu shook her head. I suspect that the Dongsang kingdom knows, which is why their attack became more ferocious, and even Feng has gone to the battlefield. That's why father and Feng couldn't come back. Otherwise, nest would be destroyed. Feng Sun didn't know what to say. Feng Wu said, "Don't worry. Have some faith in me. I'm not that easy to kill." She gave Feng Sun and Yu Minji some instructions. Everyone started working according to Feng Wu's plan. Chapter 3580, Spirit Diagram Sword. Feng Wu sat in her room and examined the details of her plan. According to Feng Wu's original arrangement, Hua Wushuang would be very useful. She wanted to have the Zhou family kill Hua Wushuang in front of the old lady, but since things had changed, so be it. She had other plans. The Zhou family, the Hua family, and the spiritual overlords. Did they think that Feng Wu didn't have a card up her sleeves? Feng Wu rubbed the booklet in her hand and smiled a little. Just as the powerful cultivators of the Hua family gathered around, ready to take care of the Feng clan tonight, a piece of news quietly spread among the other spiritual overlords. The legendary Master Mu Jiuzhou's spirit diagram sword had appeared in the Hua family. Oh God! The news spread like wildfire among the spiritual overlords. God Mu! He used to be the ruler of this continent. He was once the most capable man that ever lived. When he was young, he used the spirit diagram sword, which was an invincible cultivation technique. He had never lost a battle. But now, the spirit diagram sword was in the Hua family's treasure vault. Who spread the rumor? It had to be the Zhou family. The spiritual overlords asked the Zhou family for information, but the latter denied it. The more they denied it, the more suspicious they looked. Just then, someone leaked the information that the Zhou family had detained Hua Wushuang, and the information on the sword technique was from her. The Zhou family had detained Hua Wushuang. Hua Wushuang was the heir to the Hua family. Soon, the news spread like wildfire. However, it only got around among the capable cultivators, and ordinary people didn't know about it. But all the influential families had heard the news. They were all talking about it. Why did the Zhou family want to detain Hua Wushuang? The more they asked, the more interesting it became. The Hua family and the Zhou family had put in a lot of effort to suppress the incident between Hua Wushuang and Zhou Qingxi, but the spiritual overlords were intrigued and had to ask around. They could catch an insider, hide behind a bush, and press a dagger to the latter's throat to interrogate them. There was a very nimble person among the itinerant cultivators called Bukong. Bukong was well-connected and was the first to hear the news. He wasn't alone. He also had a friend, the black and white priest. In the inn, Bukong said, "It's true. I've asked around. The Zhou family has indeed detained Hua Wushuang." The black and white priest asked, "Why did the Zhou family detain Hua Wushuang? Aren't they afraid that the Hua family will take revenge?" Bukong said, "What happened was quite interesting." Bukong then described what he had heard. The Hua family and the Zhou family may be friends on the surface, but they've already become enemies. The priest said, "So, the Hua family really might have the spirit diagram sword." Bukong said, "The information sounds real. Not only is there a message, but there's also a map. Look at this treasure room. It looks like a real place." After that, he showed the map to the priest. Seeing this, the priest nodded and said, "That's right. It's real." "And the inscriptions?" Bukong said, "And I found Hua Wushuang in secret and forced her to make a move. She really used the stance from the spirit diagram sword. She really used it." Chapter 3581, Spirit Diagram Sword, 2. The black and white priest jumped to his feet. "Are you sure?" Bukong's eyes widened in excitement. "Absolutely." The black and white priest said, "Great. We're going to have this spirit diagram sword. Although it was Master Mu's swordplay when he was younger, it'll benefit us for the rest of our lives if we can learn even one stance from him." Bukong said, "That's right. I thought the same. We have to get the spirit diagram sword. We should." Bukong and the black and white priest whispered to each other and soon came up with a plan. As for Feng Wu, when the spirit diagram sword was involved, no one would care about Feng Wu anymore. Firmament Palace's reward? Forget about it. The news soon reached the Hua family. Mrs. Hua heard the news right away and was dumbfounded. What spirit diagram sword? The Hua family didn't have the spirit diagram sword. If the Hua family had it, they would have taken off already. She wouldn't have to come all the way to the imperial capital just to fawn on the Empress Dowager. And she frowned. But the rumor out there is so vivid. There's even a map of the treasure room. It has everything. Show me. Mrs. Hua didn't panic when she heard the news. She only picked up the map. Her 2 sons were standing next to her. The news came from her eldest son. After reading the map, Mrs. Hua was lost in her thoughts. Master Hua said anxiously, "Our vault is so well hidden. Who could have spread the rumor? It couldn't have been Wu Shuang. She doesn't even know this place, let alone how to get in." The other Master Hua said, "How many people know how to get in?" Mrs. Hua felt a headache coming on. Zhuo Qingfeng had been there before. Could it be him? After some thought, Mrs. Hua decided that Zhuo Qingfeng was the most likely suspect. What was his motive? He wanted to destroy the Hua family without getting his hands dirty. Just like how she tried to kill Feng Wu to frame Zhuo Qingfeng was going to do the same to the Hua family. Those spiritual overlords had become an influential force. "You're so cruel." Mrs. Hua gritted her teeth. It was true that Mrs. Hua didn't like Feng Wu and wanted to destroy the Feng clan, but that wasn't the main problem anymore. To Mrs. Hua, her conflict with Zhuo Qingfeng had just risen to the top of her list. The most important thing now was to solve the problem of the spiritual overlords brought by the spirit diagram sword. "Mother, are we still going to attack the Feng clan tonight?" Master Hua asked Mrs. Hua. Mrs. Hua's face was livid. She couldn't for the life of her figure out why so many problems would pop up in the middle of her plan to kill Feng Wu, someone as weak as an ant. She just couldn't bring herself to do it without solving the other problems. "We'll spare her life for now." Mrs. Hua frowned. "Our top priority now is the Zhuo family and those spiritual overlords." Master Hua said, "Mother, shall we kill them all?" Mrs. Hua glanced at him. If it was only the Zhuo family or the spiritual overlords, she could still fight them. But now Mrs. Hua didn't know if they had joined hands. Chapter 3582, Spirit Diagram Sword, 3. That malicious old man. Mrs. Hua decided to kill Zhuo Qingfeng first. Otherwise, who knew what more trouble this malicious old man would create? Once Zhuo Qingfeng was dead, those spiritual overlords would no longer be a threat. Mrs. Hua happened to know that Zhuo Qingfeng had been injured by Jun Linyuan and had yet to recover his strength. Mrs. Hua told her plan to her eldest son and let him carry it out. She went to the Zhuo family on her own. "Wow!" Little Phoenix shouted in Feng Wu's head in excitement. "Feng Wu, you're amazing. That old lady really left according to your plan. She really has decided to kill Zhuo Qingfeng first." She also told her son to spread the news that the spirit diagram sword indeed exists, but it has been stolen by the Zhuo family. It's in the Zhuo family now. Wow, the Zhuo family is in so much trouble. And you know what? That old lady, she's trying to seduce Zhuo Qingfeng. Gosh, I need to catch up with her and see what she can do. I'll send you the latest update. Feng Wu only let out a breath of relief when she heard what Little Phoenix said. Finalf. She changed the battlefield from the Feng clan to the Zhuo family. She couldn't care less about the outcome of the battle. However, if the battle took place in the Feng clan, even with the formations and traps she had set up, they might not be able to withstand it. If formations were that powerful, the war in the Peace Grassland wouldn't have lasted so long. Let's go to the Zhuo family and get ready. Mrs. Hua had no idea that everything she did was under Feng Wu's control. The Zhuo family, thump. Zhuo Qingfeng smashed his cup. Father. Zhuo Ming's forehead was covered with cold sweat. Everyone is saying that the Zhuo family has robbed the Hua clan's treasure room and stole the spirit diagram sword. Zhuo Qingfeng asked, Have you found out who leaked the information? Zhuo Ming said, it was the Hua family. Bukong told me himself. Bukong was a spiritual overlord, and Zhuo Ming had been trying to befriend him. After a pause, Zhuo Ming went on. Father, Bukong asked. Zhuo Qingfeng asked, what? Zhuo Ming said, he asked if the spirit diagram sword really is here and if he could borrow it. Zhuo Qingfeng said, bastard. Zhuo Ming broke into a cold sweat and was a little flustered. He didn't know if his father was scolding Bukong or himself. Zhuo Ming felt uneasy. He met Bukong when he was young, and they were about the same level. However, after a few decades, Bukong had reached the peak of the spiritual overlord stage, and Zhuo Ming hadn't become a spiritual overlord yet. The difference between them was like heaven and earth, and Zhuo Ming was overwhelmed with guilt. Zhuo Qingfeng coughed into his hand. Zhuo Ming went up to him in a hurry. Father, Zhuo Qingfeng waved his hand. Don't worry about it. Crossing his hands behind his back, he strolled around in the courtyard, and the look in his eyes grew grimmer. Mrs. Hua had crossed the line. They had agreed to destroy the Feng clan together. It wasn't that the Feng clan was so powerful that they had to work together to destroy it. Zhuo Qingfeng was only worried about Jun Lingyuan's revenge. Therefore, he tried to drag the Hua family down with him and was going to blame everything on the Hua family. Chapter 3583, Spirit Diagram Sword 4. Afterward, if Jun Lingyuan wanted to take his revenge, he would have to be Hua Royue. However, after what happened at the birthday banquet, Zhuo Qingfeng didn't expect such a turn of events. Hua Wushuang had ruined everything. Zhuo Qingfeng thought that someone was behind it at first, but when he caught Hua Wushuang and searched her memory, he found out what she did. When he saw the scene where she cut off Zhuo Qingxi's member, Zhuo Qingfeng was furious. What Zhuo Qingfeng didn't know was that Feng Wu had deliberately left that memory in Hua Wushuang's head. Feng Wu had set up all these traps and they were all working now. Zhuo Qingfeng now believed that Hua Wushuang had killed Zhuo Qingxi on purpose, and Zhuo Qingxi was the only direct descendant of the Zhuo family now. What was more, no one knew that Zhuo Qingfeng had been raising and teaching Zhuo Qingxi all these years. Zhuo Qingxi was even more talented than Zhuo Qingluan, who had true phoenix blood. But now, Zhuo Qingxi was dead. Zhuo Qingfeng had lost all hope. Hua Wushuang. Several times, Zhuo Qingfeng wanted to throttle Hua Wushuang to take his revenge, but he fought back his impulse. But now, the Hua family had made a scene again, saying that Zhuo Qingfeng had entered their treasure room and stolen the spirit diagram sword. Zhuo Qingfeng was so angry that he laughed. When he tried to set Hua Royue up, she tried to set him up as well. Come to think of it, Hua Royue must have learned about what happened back then. That abominable old woman. How dare she put on a show in front of him? She hated him so much, but she was still drinking tea with him and talking about working with him. She was such a good actress. Father? Father? Zhuo Ming saw his father's livid face and grim eyes. The look on his father's face was murderous at times, and he would smile maliciously. Zhuo Ming was frightened. Zhuo Qingfeng looked at Zhuo Ming in frustration. His good-for-nothing son had yet to become a spiritual overlord. Bring Hua Wushuang here. I'm going to investigate her again. Zhuo Qingfeng frowned. Does she have the spirit diagram sword on her? Zhuo Ming rushed out. The spiritual diagram sword was too important to be missed. After Zhuo Ming left, a figure landed in the courtyard. Zhuo Ming turned around and saw that it was Hua Royue, the old lady of the Hua family. Here we go. With its invisibility ability, Little Phoenix followed Mrs. Hua all the way from the Hua manor to the Zhuo family, but no one noticed it. Neither of the two spiritual saints could see the bird. The invisibility spell was Little Phoenix's natural skill, and Master Mu had created the spiritual concealment technique for it. Therefore, when Little Phoenix activated the skill, even a spiritual saint might not be able to detect it. For instance, Zhuo Qingfeng and Mrs. Hua sat opposite each other with a stone table between them. The bold Little Phoenix turned invisible, activated its spirit concealment technique, and lay down right on that table. Zhuo Qingfeng smiled when he saw Mrs. Hua. Royu, you're here. Hua Ruyue stared at Zhuo Qingfeng with an indifferent look on her face. Raising her chin, she glanced at Zhuo Qingfeng in an arrogant manner. My little phoenix complained to Feng Wu right away. I've come to the Zhuo family with the old lady. Gosh, she's doing great. She's treating Zhuo Qingfeng as if she's the most beautiful woman in the world. I'm telling you, Zhuo Qingfeng used to follow her everywhere. Chapter 3584. Instant Change 1. Feng Wu was speechless. Which is more important, your life or gossip? Little Phoenix said, I love life as much as I love gossip. Zhuo Qingfeng smiled at the old lady. Rongyue, what's wrong? I'm not mad at you yet, and you're mad at me already? Mrs. Hua smirked. Mad at me? Who gave you the right to do that? Zhuo Qingfeng's face darkened a little. Qingxi is dead. Why do you think I'm mad at you? I have a lot of grandchildren, but most of them have died over the years, and I've trained Qingxi in secret. Don't you know that? The old lady said, I didn't kill your grandson. Zhuo Qingfeng didn't reply. Old Mrs. Hua frowned. I didn't kill Zhuo Qingxi. You know my medical skills. There was no way that I couldn't cure him. Zhuo Qingfeng smirked. That's right. You're such a great doctor. How can my Qingxi be dead? Was he suggesting that she was the culprit? Old Mrs. Hua smacked the table. Zhuo Qingfeng, are you slandering me now? Is that how you talk to me? Zhuo Qingfeng smirked but didn't say anything. Old Mrs. Hua didn't know what to do. Back then, Zhuo Qingfeng was in love with her, but they were both old now, and it was possible that he had a change of heart. Old Mrs. Hua softened her tone and said earnestly, I didn't expect that Zhuo Qingxi's wound would burst open. I couldn't stop the bleeding. It was as if someone had tampered with it. Zhuo Qingfeng said, Your granddaughter was the only one who had made contact with him before you. Mrs. Hua almost choked. It seemed that Zhuo Qingfeng was convinced that the Hua family had done it. Old Mrs. Hua said, Why would I kill him? We've only just agreed to work together. Why should I create such trouble? If it hadn't been for that, we would have destroyed the Feng clan by now. I have reason to believe that the Feng clan is behind this and is trying to drive a wedge between our families. The more she said, the more convinced she became. Zhuo Qingfeng, on the other hand, found the old lady's suggestion idiotic. Mrs. Hua asked, You don't believe me? Zhuo Qingfeng said, Are you an idiot? If the Feng clan really can do that, do you think we can destroy them so easily? Everyone says you're smart and resourceful, but why do I find you so retarded? Old Mrs. Hua was so angry that she almost choked. Zhuo Qingfeng smirked again. You're only putting on airs because I used to be in love with you. Hua Royue, we're both old enough to have grandchildren. Don't you think you're overdoing it by acting like a teenage girl? Old Mrs. Hua almost had a stroke. Little Phoenix was thrilled. It was very talented in simulation, so it sent the conversation between Mrs. Hua and Zhuo Qingfeng back to Feng Wu in their own voices. Feng Wu smacked her forehead. What an interesting old lady. Mrs. Hua was very flexible. Seeing that her plan wouldn't work, she changed her attitude. All right, if that's the case, let's talk like one head of the clan to another. Sitting ramrod straight, Mrs. Hua stared at Zhuo Qingfeng. There's only one way to prove the innocence of the Hua family. An autopsy. I'll need to examine Zhuo Qingxi's body. Zhuo Qingfeng stared at Mrs. Hua. Mrs. Hua had never been so serious. She stared at Zhuo Qingfeng and said, The only way to resolve the misunderstanding between our families is to examine his body. Chapter 3585. Instant Change 2. Zhuo Ming went to see Hua Wushuang. However, he didn't expect Hua Wushuang to be meeting someone at this moment. To be more precise, someone was meeting Hua Wushuang. It was none other than Feng Wu. Feng Wu put the moves from the spirit diagram sword into Hua Wushuang's brain in a special way. In fact, it was just a few feigned moves, not real ones. Feng Wu had always had the spirit diagram sword, but her beautiful master had told her that she could only dabble on it but shouldn't go too deep. There was something wrong with the cultivation technique, which would damage her foundation and reduce her lifespan. That was why her beautiful master had given Feng Wu the spirit diagram sword as a reference book and didn't allow her to study it in private. Feng Wu only treated it as an extracurricular book and never thought that the spirit diagram sword was that important. It was only when Little Phoenix told her that she might be able to try the spirit diagram sword that Feng Wu took out the cultivation technique. The result shocked her. It turned out that her beautiful master was such a terrifying existence. The spirit diagram sword that he had abandoned in his early years could actually cause an uproar on the continent. So many people jumped at the opportunity like moths to a flame. Feng Wu thought to herself that her beautiful master had asked her to memorize a lot of books back then. Could they all be profound techniques? Feng Wu decided to find some time to study the cultivation techniques she had memorized. Back then, her beautiful master had only asked her to memorize it. He passed out before he had the time to teach her. He still hadn't woken up yet. After infusing 2 moves of the spirit diagram sword into Hua Wushuang's mind, Feng Wu heard something outside and immediately hid herself. Little Phoenix had transmitted the correct cultivation technique to Feng Wu through its brainwaves, so no one would be able to detect Feng Wu now that she had concealed her aura. The door was pushed open. Feng Wu saw 2 figures running in. One was a Taoist priest in a black and white robe, and the other was a round-faced chubby one. Hua Wushuang was locked in a special dungeon. There were formations and mechanisms outside, and ordinary people couldn't enter. Who were these 2 people? Before the 2 of them could reach Hua Wushuang, they forced her to make a move. Hua Wushuang had only just learned 2 moves from Feng Wu, and she used them right away. She didn't have a sword, so she grabbed a wooden stick and pointed it at the 2 of them. Wukong said, "That's the spirit diagram sword." "Brother priest, it's really a sword move from the spirit diagram sword." Black and white priest nodded. "This girl is the living spirit diagram sword. Take her away." "Let's go." Wukong grabbed Hua Wushuang and tucked her under his armpit, while black and white priest led the way. Feng Wu nodded. She knew they were a pair of spiritual overlords because she had been secretly getting people to keep an eye on this group of experts who were prepared to kill her at any time. She recognized these 2 people. One was black and white priest, and the other was Wukong. These 2 people were very powerful among those spiritual overlords, probably the best among the group. Seeing that they had taken Hua Wushuang away, Feng Wu smiled. That was great. After they left the dungeon, Feng Wu saw they were about to run out. How could she let them run away like this? Her effort would be in vain. In the dark night sky, everything was silent. Feng Wu shouted, "Someone's taken Hua Wushuang and the spirit diagram sword." Hua Wushuang has the spirit diagram sword. Chapter 3586, Instant Changes, 3. Feng Wu's words hit the nail on the head. Hua Wushuang had the spirit diagram sword on her, which meant that the Hua family had indeed owned the spirit diagram sword. Now that Hua Wushuang was in the Zhou family's house, did that mean that the Zhou family was interrogating her for the spirit diagram sword? Buong, who was about to jump onto the wall, was shocked. Damn it. Who did that? The most terrifying thing was that he didn't see anyone nearby. At this moment, the Zhou family had already discovered the pair. They were rushing in their direction. Wukong threw Hua Wushuang out of the wall. "Take her away." However, what shocked Wukong was that after Hua Wushuang was thrown away, she was actually bounced back by a strange force. Wukong was stunned. Wasn't there his men outside to catch her? What was going on? With a thud, Hua Wushuang fell onto a roof. The powerful force collapsed the roof and buried Hua Wushuang. The spiritual overlords of the Zhou family were closing in. Wukong, black and white priest, how dare you? Zhou Ming was infuriated when he saw them. How dare you? Take them down. The current Zhou family was as heavily guarded as a prison. There were 15 spiritual overlords guarding the 4 directions, and 4 of them were following Zhou Ming. The four spiritual overlords rushed forward and surrounded Bukong and Black and White Priest. Black and White Priest told Bukong, "Go get the girl. I'll deal with them." "Sure." Bukong immediately rushed toward the collapsed house. At the same time, he shouted to the people outside, "Come and help me. I have the living spirit diagram sword here." The spirit diagram sword was too attractive. Hearing Bukong's words, 3 more people jumped in from the other side of the wall. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. These 3 figures instantly rushed toward the collapsed house. Whoever snatched Hua Wushuang would have the spirit diagram sword. Feng Wu knew that Hua Wushuang was key. She couldn't let her die. There were 3 more spiritual overlords from the Zhou family. Because of the fierce battles, the walls of the Zhou family's houses kept collapsing. Zhou Qingfeng saw all of this. He stared at Mrs. Hua Ruiyue. "Is this your so-called innocence?" Hua Ruiyue's expression was extremely ugly. She didn't know what went wrong. No matter what plan she made, it was always destroyed before it could be carried out. Hua Ruiyue stared at Zhou Qingfeng. "Would you believe me if I said that the people fighting outside weren't from the Hua family?" Mrs. Hua had told Hua Huayu, her eldest son, to wait for Aunt Shi's orders. Little Phoenix had already heard that and told Feng Wu. Feng Wu couldn't beat Aunt Shi, but someone else could. She had 2 spiritual overlords with her, and Jun Linyuan had put them by her side to protect her. Now was the time to use them. These 2 spiritual overlords were Gao Gong and Yuan Pan. In the Imperial Guards, they were called General Gao and General Yuan. At this moment, the 2 of them worked together to take down Aunt Shi, who was alone. Feng Wu snuck out of the Zhou family's house. When she saw General Gao signaling her from a dark alley, she left without another word. At that moment, the spiritual overlords and the Zhou family were fighting, so no one noticed her. Moreover, Feng Wu had concealed her aura. "Miss Feng Wu, Aunt Shi is here." General Gao led Feng Wu into a yard. Chapter 3587, Instant Changes 4. When he stared at Feng Wu, his gaze was sharp, and he exuded a cold aura. He didn't know how to describe Miss Feng Wu. Ever since General Gao found out about Feng Wu's plan, he had thought that Feng Wu had lost her mind. She wanted to destroy the Zhou family, the Hua family, and the spiritual overlords all by herself. He had done some calculations for Feng Wu. At the end of the day, there were only about 10 spiritual overlords on their side, and their enemies had about 4 times that. How were they going to fight this battle? Therefore, he had always disapproved of it with a cold expression. General Gao felt that he would probably die this time. In such a dangerous situation, Feng Wu couldn't be bothered to make General Gao happy. She went straight to Aunt Shi. Seeing Aunt Shi, Feng Wu smiled. "Very good." Aunt Shi was shocked to see Feng Wu. Because Feng Wu was herself now and wasn't disguised as anyone else. Feng Wu looked at Aunt Shi, then at General Gao. General Gao was shocked. "What do you want?" Feng Wu smiled. "General Gao, I'm sorry." General Gao was dumbfounded. Feng Wu said, "You can be Aunt Shi." Although Aunt Shi was a woman, she was extremely tall and was strong like a man. She resembled General Gao a little. General Gao said, "How is that possible? I can't do it. I can't act." Feng Wu sat him down and said with a smile, "It's fine. You only have 1 line." After that, Feng Wu began to apply something to General Gao's face. Aunt Shi had been sober the whole time. She watched as Feng Wu glanced at her from time to time and then continued to apply something to General Gao's face. Before long, a familiar face appeared in front of her. Feng Wu took all the accessories off Aunt Shi and asked her to take off her black clothes for General Gao. Although they were all wearing black clothes, the black clothes of the Hua family were different. In order to identify their own people, there was a secret mark on the collar. Only the Hua family knew. Staring at Feng Wu, Aunt Shi suddenly had an idea. It was you." Aunt Shi stared at Feng Wu as if someone had grabbed her by the throat. "I can't believe you did that. I get it now." Aunt Shi stared at Feng Wu. You were the one who killed Zhuo Qingxi, weren't you? Since you can turn someone into me, you can pretend to be Hua Wushuang. So, you're behind what happened to the Hua family in the past 2 days, aren't you? And she glared at Feng Wu and gritted her teeth. She didn't need Feng Wu's answer because she had already made up her mind. No wonder my lady can't figure out why Miss Wushuang suddenly became like that. It was all you. Feng Wu smiled and nodded. And she asked, "You robbed the treasure rooms too?" Feng Wu looked at her and nodded. And she asked, "What about the spirit diagram sword? Is that your doing?" Feng Wu looked at her and heaved a long sigh. "Why are you so smart? If you were more stupid, I wouldn't have to kill you, but you guessed everything. How could I let you live?" Feng Wu looked at General Gao. "Kill her." Spiritual overlords had great defensive ability. If Feng Wu wanted to kill Aunt Shi, she might not be able to break through her defenses. General Gao glanced at Feng Wu and stabbed Aunt Shi in the chest without another word. Aunt Shi died on the spot. "Let's go. It's time for our war." Chapter 3588, Last Resort, 1. General Gao stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. "Are you sure you want to continue?" Feng Wu said, "Of course." "General Gao, are you really not afraid of death?" Feng Wu gave him an indifferent look. "It's better than waiting for them to kill me." General Gao frowned. "They can't be bothered to kill you now." Feng Wu said, "That's why I'm fighting back. Do I have to wait for them to kill me when they're free?" General Gao was rendered speechless by Feng Wu's words. Feng Wu sighed. "I'm standing here because I fought for it. If I don't, I'll die. If you don't want to help me..." General Gao looked at Feng Wu in frustration. Jun Linyuan had told them to protect Feng Wu with their lives. "If you think you can win, then let's fight." "I don't believe you, though." General Gao gave Feng Wu one last look and walked out of the yard. Led by Master Hua Huayu, the Hua family was lying in an ambush outside the Zhuo family's house. Aunt Shi had gone in to gather information and was accidentally caught by General Gao and General Yuan. When he saw Aunt Shi return, Hua Huayu lowered his voice and asked anxiously, "What's the situation inside now?" General Gao played Aunt Shi, but he couldn't imitate her voice like Feng Wu did, so he lowered his voice and only said one word. "Kill." The Hua family had been waiting impatiently for a long time. When they heard that, they immediately became restless. Hua Huayu thought that Aunt Shi had received an order from Mrs. Hua, so he believed it without a doubt. He raised his sword and pointed it at the sky. "Charge!" They rushed into the Zhuo family's house. At this moment, members of the Zhuo family had already lost control from fighting. All the spiritual overlords were fighting fiercely. The Zhuo family had more spiritual overlords, so they had the upper hand. Zhuo Ming smirked. "Bukong, you'll regret coming to the Zhuo family today. You can't come and go as you please." At this moment, Bukong was surrounded by 3 spiritual overlords. He was already injured in many places and was forced into a sorry state. Bukong cursed. "We're just asking for the spirit diagram sword. Zhuo Ming, is the Zhuo family going to make an enemy of all the spiritual overlords in the world?" Zhuo Ming said, "The Zhuo family doesn't have the spirit diagram sword." Bukong laughed coldly. "Hua Wushuang has it." Zhuo Ming said, "Hua Wushuang isn't from the Zhuo family." Bukong said, "That's good. Just hand over Hua Wushuang and let us take her away." Zhuo Ming said, "No way." Bukong said, "Zhuo Ming, we've already spread the news that the Zhuo family has the spirit diagram sword through all kinds of channels. Do you think you can keep it a secret? Even if you kill us today, millions of people will covet the spirit diagram sword in the future. They'll bury you all." Zhuo Ming was so angry that his eyes turned red. He would never have thought that bringing Hua Wushuang back would bring him so much trouble. At this moment he really wanted to throw Hua Wushuang out. But the spirit diagram sword. Bukong and the others were greedy, but wasn't the Zhuo family. The Zhuo family also wanted the spirit diagram sword. Zhuo Ming thought he could always defeat Bukong and his people. After that, he could just force Hua Wushuang to write down the sword technique and kill her. Chapter 3589, Last Resort, 2. At that thought, Zhuo bellowed, "Kill them all. Also, lock down the city. No one is allowed to leave the city without the Zhuo family's permission. Kill anyone who insists on leaving." Bukong sneered. "It seems that Hua Wushuang really has the spirit diagram sword. Everyone let's go. Kill Zhuo Ming and snatch the swordplay manual." The two sides fought fiercely and suffered countless casualties. There were already over half a dozen spiritual overlords lying on the ground. Most of them weren't from the Zhuo family. Almost all of them were injured, but none of them were dead. It was too difficult to kill a spiritual overlord. At this moment, the spiritual overlords who were after Feng Wu were at a disadvantage. Seeing that the situation wasn't looking good, Bukong immediately had the intention to retreat. But at that moment, Aunt Shi rushed in and charged at Zhuo Ming. Many people recognized that this was Aunt Shi, who was working for Mrs. Hua. Aunt Shi was fighting Zhuo Ming's spiritual overlords. Hua Huayu was instantly anxious. What was wrong with Aunt Shi? They had agreed that they would observe the situation when they came in, and then decide which side to fight against. Aunt Shi shouldn't have attacked Zhuo Ming like that. That would expose the Hua family's other cultivators. Zhuo Ming's eyes widened when he saw, Aunt Shi shouted, "The spiritual overlords of the Hua family are attacking us. Kill them." Bukong turned around and saw Hua Huayu. He immediately smiled and said, "Why are you so late? Didn't you propose to destroy the Zhuo family together? Do you want to be a free rider? Hurry up and attack." Hua Huayu looked at Bukong in shock. What did he mean by that? Why didn't he know that the Hua family had agreed to deal with the Zhuo family together with these people? They had agreed to destroy the Feng family together. But before Hua Huayu could explain, Zhuo Ming took Bukong's words seriously. Aunt Shi had rushed in to kill him first, and then there were Bukong's words. Zhuo Ming had no choice but to believe him. "The Hua family, we were wrong about you. Kill the Hua family's spiritual overlords. Kill them all. Don't let anyone off." The situation changed, and all the spiritual overlords joined forces with the Hua family to fight against the Zhuo family. Fortunately, the Zhuo family had mobilized many experts from the clan in Jingjiang province this time. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to withstand the other party's attack. In the Zhuo family's yard, Zhuo Qingfeng stared at Mrs. Hua, who was sitting opposite him. The look in his eyes was terrifying. "Hua Royue, is this the collaboration between the Zhuo family and the Hua family you're talking about?" Mrs. Hua was stunned. She had indeed asked Aunt Shi to come forward and join forces with the itinerant cultivators, but how could it be so effective? Was Aunt Shi that capable? But now that things had come to this, there was nothing Mrs. Hua couldn't admit. She smiled and looked at Zhuo Qingfeng. "Zhuo, so many years have passed in the blink of an eye. We're both old." Zhuo Qingfeng stared at Mrs. Hua and smiled coldly. "What do you want?" Mrs. Hua said, "Why don't we test each other's skills?" Zhuo Qingfeng stared at her with an eerie gaze. Those sharp eyes seemed to be able to pierce right through her heart. Although Hua Royue said that she wanted to test his skills, what she meant was very obvious. She was going to attack. Zhuo Qingfeng suddenly laughed coldly. "All right, Hua Royue, did you know it all along?" Hua Royue stared at him with a sharp gaze. "Know what?" Zhuo Qingfeng said, "About your husband." Hua Royue stared at him and nodded slowly. "Yes." Chapter 3590, Last Resort, 3. Zhuo Qingfeng, I knew it. No wonder you're attacking the Zhuo family today. You're taking revenge for your husband. That's right. Your husband actually loved you very much. I deliberately took him to the brothels to have fun. I also deliberately tricked him into getting drunk, and he ended up drowning in the Qinyang River. I didn't expect you to find out about the secret I did back then. I thought I could hide it from you for the rest of my life. Mrs. Hua's expression remained calm. So it really was you. Zhuo Chengfeng's expression changed slightly. You didn't know at first? Mrs. Hua's gaze was unprecedentedly cold. It doesn't matter if I knew at first. What's important is that I know now. Zhuo Chengfeng, you killed the love of my life. I'll skin you alive and drink your blood. Die. With that, Mrs. Hua made the first move. Little Phoenix had been listening on the table, but it didn't want to get hurt, so it went under the table. It told Feng Wu the shocking news in a hurry. Listen. I didn't know there was such a thing in the past. Feng Wu hadn't expected that she would dig up such explosive information when she was just setting the Hua family and the Zhuo family up. This was so interesting. Where are you? Why is it so noisy? Little Phoenix asked Feng Wu curiously. Feng Wu said, I snuck into the Zhuo family. By the way, where are Mrs. Hua and Zhuo Chengfeng? Little Phoenix said, they're fighting in the subspace. If they start fighting here, the imperial capital will sink. Feng Wu asked, are you sitting idly now? Little Phoenix said, I'm wondering if I should go into the subspace too. Feng Wu said, there's no need for that. With such a blood feud, they'll never reconcile. Let them have their dogfight. By the way, get over here. We're going to do something big. Little Phoenix hid itself and rushed in Feng Wu's direction. I really like what you're saying. When Little Phoenix arrived, it saw Feng Wu heading for a remote yard in the Zhuo family's house. It jumped onto Feng Wu's shoulder and asked excitedly, what are we going to do next? Feng Wu said, my job. Little Phoenix looked at Feng Wu in confusion. What was that supposed to be? However, it quickly realized what the answer was. What else could it be? Of course, it was to rob someone's family treasure. Little Phoenix almost drooled. It loved Feng Wu's job. She got what she wanted for free, punished the bad guys, and made a fortune overnight. Where is it? Hey, stupid tiger, find it. Feng Wu had 2 pets, one of which was Little Phoenix. The bird was raised by her beautiful master and would be Feng Wu's flying mount in the future. There was also a cub, which Feng Wu had raised herself and was used as a land mount. Unfortunately, the cub grew too slowly. It was still as small as a kitten, and Feng Wu couldn't ride it at all. Little Phoenix used to have a treasure-seeking skill too, but it had lost its sense after the phenomenal success of the stealth skill. Therefore, Little Phoenix had to rely on the cub's sharp senses and smell. The cub ran ahead of Feng Wu, leading her to the remote yard. Little Phoenix had seen many spiritual overlords fighting on its way to Feng Wu, and many of them were lying on the ground. Chapter 3591. Chapter 3592. Feng Wu followed the cub all the way to the remote yard with Little Phoenix. The cub hopped around on a spot and looked at Feng Wu. Feng Wu knew at once that something was amiss. As expected, when Feng Wu examined it carefully, she realized that there was a mechanism here. After figuring out the pattern, Feng Wu smiled. She couldn't understand why these famous families trusted the inscriptions so much. The Hua family had used 3 inscription locks, and so had the Zhuo family. They were very high-level inscription locks, and Feng Wu estimated them to be at least level 8. The inscription lock could ward off many people, but not Feng Wu. With the Phoenix pen, Feng Wu had become even more powerful. With a flip of her inscription pen, complicated inscription characters floated out from its tip. The characters fell into the lock one after another in a single file. Until the last character. With a click, the inscription lock was opened. Feng Wu then lifted the ordinary-looking wooden board. After the trapdoor opened, there was an escalator that meandered down. It was so long that one couldn't see the other end. Before Feng Wu could react, the cub had already rushed down the stairs. Excited, Little Phoenix shouted in Feng Wu's head, I can sense spiritual essence. It's so dense. What's down there? Little Phoenix didn't wait for Feng Wu's response. It dashed forward as fast as it could and wouldn't stop. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead in resignation. Although she could sense some spiritual essence, she wasn't as sharp as the 2 pets. It was no wonder. They could sense treasures from afar, but she couldn't. Feng Wu restored the wooden board and locked the inscription lock again. Although the Zhou family was busy fighting the Hua family and the factionless cultivators, no one knew if anyone would come here. If this place wasn't restored to its original state and someone else came in, Feng Wu would be doomed if they were spiritual overlords. She walked all the way down the winding escalator. As Feng Wu walked down, the lights on both sides of the wall lit up automatically, and misty rays of light filled the room. Before Feng Wu arrived, she heard a rustling sound as if someone was drinking water. When Feng Wu reached the bottom floor, she found Little Phoenix and the cubs sticking out their butts and drinking from the pool. Feng Wu looked around. The ground floor was empty. Apart from the pool, there was nothing else. Feng Wu's attention was drawn to the pond. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. That wasn't a pool of water but spiritual marrow. The grades of spiritual stones, spiritual liquid, and spiritual marrow were arranged from low to high. The blood source crystal was slightly more precious than the spiritual marrow, but it was also much harder to obtain. At Feng Wu's level, spiritual stones were of little use to her, and spiritual marrow was the best. However, there was too little spiritual marrow around. A spiritual stone mine that could produce half a kilo of spiritual marrow would be considered very rich, but there was at least 50 kilograms of spiritual marrow here. Feng Wu was shocked. She remembered that she had been to the auction house. The price of 1 kilo of spiritual marrow was enough to make her jaw drop. She suddenly had over 50 kilograms here. The cub and Little Phoenix took big gulps, afraid that they would fall behind each other. But they were too. Chapter 3592, Breakthrough 1. However, they were too young, and their stomachs were too small, so they were soon full. The cub was unwilling to give up. It wanted to drink more, but in the next second, it almost fell into the pool. Feng Wu grabbed it by the tail so that it wouldn't fall in. Drink. Little Phoenix urged Feng Wu. It'll help you with your cultivation. Maybe it'll help you rise a level. Feng Wu said, shouldn't I be refining my body right now? Can I still make a breakthrough? Little Phoenix said, of course, you can make a breakthrough. You can always train your body afterward. Besides, we're in a big battle right now. If you improve your strength, you'll be able to stay alive. Feng Wu agreed. Without hesitation, she began to absorb the spiritual marrow in the pool. She opened her mouth, and the spiritual marrow flowed from the pool into her mouth. The pure spiritual essence seemed to have built a thin bridge between the pool and her mouth. Little Phoenix and the cub watched from the side, curious about how much Feng Wu could take. They would rest for now. After Feng Wu finished absorbing it, they would drink as much as they could. If they were too full to drink more, they would pack up everything and take it away. However, their eyes soon widened. Because Feng Wu never seemed to stop. There seemed to be a rainbow bridge between the spiritual marrow pool and Feng Wu's mouth, and she kept going. Little Phoenix turned to look at the spiritual marrow pool. The two pets had only drunk less than half a kilo each, and they were already full. They had so much spiritual essence in their systems that their bodies hurt, and they didn't dare drink more. However, Feng Wu, she was still absorbed. She hadn't stopped. The cub widened its eyes and looked at Little Phoenix in shock. So did Little Phoenix. It was unbelievable. They all turned to look at the pool. More than 50 kilograms of spiritual marrow. Little Phoenix felt that Zhou Chengfeng must have spent countless years accumulating it. He had probably wanted to use it for his breakthrough. If he saw this scene, he would be furious. Feng Wu had already absorbed all the spiritual marrow in the pool. Even the last layer stuck to the bottom of the pool was sucked into her mouth. However, her stomach remained flat afterward. No one knew where the spiritual marrow went. Little Phoenix and the others didn't know that Feng Wu was undergoing a drastic change. Feng Wu sat on the ground with her legs crossed and her eyes closed. Her fair face was slightly flushed, and all the interference from the outside world was blocked. All the spiritual essence was turned into spiritual liquid in her dantian. The torrent of spiritual marrow kept washing over it. Her dantian, which was already much sturdier than others, had undergone a strange change at this moment. It actually grew into a white transparent ball the size of a bowl. Other people's dantian was the size of an egg, but Feng Wu's dantian was the size of a bowl, and it glowed with a faint golden color. The spiritual marrow was still continuously injected into her dantian, washing it over and over. In the end, there was a buzz. Feng Wu opened her eyes and gave Little Phoenix a strange look. Little Phoenix said, "What?" Feng Wu said, "I'm going to make a breakthrough." Little Phoenix said, "Go ahead." Feng Wu's eyes glittered, and she stared at Little Phoenix. "It's not going to be one level." Chapter 3593, Breakthrough 2. Little Phoenix said, "So, you mean?" Feng Wu said, "Probably not 2 levels either." Little Phoenix was shocked. Feng Wu said, "I can't hold it in anymore." Little Phoenix said, "Hold on. How many levels is it going to be? Don't do anything rash." The bird was so anxious. Feng Wu said, at least 3 levels. Feng Wu was now a level 8 spiritual king, and 3 more levels would make her a level 2 spiritual overlord. There will be a lightning tribulation when you advance to the spiritual overlord stage. You're breaking through 3 levels in one go. The lightning tribulation must be terrifying. "You're doomed," Little Phoenix cried. "Can't you take your time?" Feng Wu said anxiously, "I can't hold on much longer." Little Phoenix said, Well. Feng Wu asked, "Can I have someone take it for me?" Little Phoenix said, "You can't find someone who's much stronger than you. Spiritual saints won't do, but spiritual overlords can. The more people you have, the more likely you'll be able to survive." Feng Wu took a deep breath. "I see." After that, Feng Wu ran up the stairs. The cubs saw that Feng Wu was bulging like a cylinder, and it was very difficult for her to walk out. "She's in danger this time. Let's go and protect her," said Little Phoenix. "Of course, when she attracts the lightning tribulation, we have to hide in her space as soon as possible, or we'll both be blown up, understand?" The little tiger cub's expression was nervous and solemn. Feng Wu walked into the Zhou family's house. The Zhou family was now a bloody battlefield. Zhou Qingfeng and Mrs. Hua were fighting in subspace, but the remaining spiritual overlords had been fighting crazily. The Zhou family and the Hua family each had 15 spiritual overlords, and there were 15 itinerant cultivators. In the end, the Zhou family came up with another 5 spiritual overlords. The 10 spiritual overlords that Feng Wu had brought with her hadn't joined the battle yet. They were just standing guard outside. The itinerant cultivators had been trying to run away, but because Feng Wu's spiritual overlords were guarding the area, they were caught as soon as they tried to leave. They had already caught 5 of them. The scene was a mess. More than half of the Zhou family's house had collapsed. Zhou Qingfeng set up a protective shield before he left, so the battle didn't affect the area outside the Zhou family. Otherwise, everything within dozens of kilometers would have been razed to the ground. Boom! There was a powerful explosion. Flames were leaping toward the sky. The Hua family and the itinerant cultivators worked together to fight the Zhou family. As a result, the Zhou family kept losing spiritual overlords, and there were fewer and fewer powerful cultivators left. Zhou Ming and his wife almost burst into tears. Those spiritual overlords were the Zhou family's last trump cards. The last 5 spiritual lords were all that they had. "Father, when are you coming back?" Zhou Ming clenched his fists and narrowed his eyes. Just then, Bukong placed a sword at Zhou Ming's neck. "Zhou Ming, for the sake of our friendship, I won't kill you. Hand over the spirit diagram sword," Bukong said coldly. Zhou Ming couldn't fight back at all. He gritted his teeth and said, "We don't have the spirit diagram sword. If someone does have it, it has to be the Hua family. Hua Wushuang knows the spirit diagram sword, right? Take her away." Zhou Ming was frustrated. Why did he have to bring Hua Wushuang here? He had caused so much trouble. If this continued, the Zhou family would really be wiped out. Chapter 3594, Breakthrough 4. Ming gritted his teeth. I don't care about the spirit diagram sword anymore. Take Hua Wushuang away. Whether you can get the spirit diagram sword out of her is up to you. However, Bukong snorted. Do you think I didn't ask her? You're broken Hua Wushuang's mind. She's crazy now, and we can't get the spirit diagram sword out of her. You must have gotten the spirit diagram sword from her and then destroyed her brain so that no one can get it out. Tell me, where is the spirit diagram sword? Ming was furious. There was really no spirit diagram sword. What should he say to make them believe him? At that moment Mrs. Zhou had an idea. She cried. Since the Hua family had let Hua Wushuang cultivate the spirit diagram sword, they must have the manual. Go to the Hua family and ask for it. You shouldn't have come after us. We really don't have it. We can't give you anything even if you kill all of us. If we have it, why don't we give it to you? We could have focused on the Zhou family after getting rid of you all. Mrs. Zhou cried miserably. She had never been in such a sorry state in her life. Hadn't the Dugu family always been in an alliance with the Zhou family? Why hadn't the Gudu family come to help? Mrs. Zhu's heart sank. Bukong believed Mrs. That's right. Since Hua Wushuang knew the spirit diagram sword, it meant. Bukong and Black and White Priest immediately stopped and gestured for the itinerant cultivators to stop as well. The remaining cultivators of the Zhou family were still fighting the spiritual overlords of the Hua family. The Zhou family had 20 spiritual overlords. Although many of them were injured, they could still fight. However, the Hua family only sent 15 this time. Furthermore, Aunt Shi, the leader, was nowhere to be seen. Hua Huayu was furious. Seeing that their spiritual overlords were surrounded by the Zhou family and that the itinerant cultivators, Hua Huayu had an idea. It was impossible to say that Hua Wushuang had never cultivated the spirit diagram sword, because everyone already believed it. So the only way now was, blame someone else. Blame someone else. Wushuang didn't get the spirit diagram sword from our family. If the Hua family had the spirit diagram sword, I would have learned it long ago. Why haven't I learned it yet? Because it doesn't belong to the Hua family at all. A few days ago, Wushuang came to the palace, and Her Majesty gave her a treasure. Ever since then, Wushuang's cultivation has improved greatly. She went from a level I to a level 8 spiritual king. So, the owner should have been the Empress Dowager. Hua Huayu was very bold. He had dragged the Empress Dowager into this mess. With so many people around, the Empress Dowager would definitely hear about this. The Hua family would probably lose her favor. Bukong frowned. In other words, the Empress Dowager had the spirit diagram sword. Zhou Ming nodded in a hurry. The Empress Dowager must have given it to Wushuang. The spirit diagram sword is amazing. It can make a person reach level 8 of the spiritual king stage from level 1. If the Zhou family had such a cultivation technique, my sons and daughters wouldn't have died one after another. Bukong thought that that was indeed the case. Hua Wushuang was already in his hands, so there was no point in continuing this battle. Chapter 3595, Heavenly Lightning Tribulation, 1. Thinking of this, Bukong and the other spiritual overlords wanted to stop fighting. However, how could they call a truce just because they wanted to? Feng Wu was sitting on the roof, filled to the brim with spiritual essence. She sat cross-legged quietly and focused her mind. Golden light lingered around her, and electric arcs flickered, making her look like a lightning person. But because everyone was busy fighting, no one noticed her existence. Only at this moment, after everyone stopped fighting, did someone notice that something was wrong. Hey, what's that? That looks like a person. That person is so fat. He's at least a meter wide, right? Hey, why does it look like a woman? There's lightning on her body? Is she absorbing lightning from the sky? Strange, I didn't hear any thunder. Everyone looked up and saw black clouds rolling in the sky. Layers of clouds overlapped and became thicker and thicker as if they were about to fall. What on earth is going on here? If I remember correctly, this is lightning tribulation. That person looks like she's only at the spiritual king stage, but she attracted lightning tribulations? Who is she? Everyone asked Zhuo-Ming in unison. Zhuo-Ming was confused. There was no such person in the Zhuo family. At this moment, Bukong suddenly frowned. This person is using her own strength to attract the lightning tribulation. Does she want to kill us? Bukong turned around and stared at Zhuo-Ming. Is this one of your tricks? Zhuo-Ming had no idea. He looked at his elders suspiciously. Had they arranged? Hua Huayu sneered. Is this a lightning tribulation when one rises from the spiritual king stage to the spiritual kingdom stage? Unfortunately, we're all at the spiritual overlord stage. This lightning tribulation is useless to us. Dark clouds covered the sky. From time to time, lightning flashed, and it didn't look powerful at all. Everyone was a little worried at first, but they didn't care anymore. They looked at Zhuo-Ming with disdain. You think you can hurt us with that little lightning? Zhuo-Ming was about to explain when Bukong asked, What's going on? Why can't we get out? He couldn't get out? The black and white priest looked at Bukong in confusion, but the latter said solemnly, We really can't get out. When did the Zhuo family activate this formation? This wall doesn't look high, but we can't jump over it. The black and white priest also tried to jump over the wall. The wall wasn't tall, but it seemed like it would grow by itself. The higher he jumped, the higher the wall would rise. He couldn't jump out at all. The black and white priest punched the wall, and a spider web-like crack appeared on it. Everyone looked excited. That might work. However, in the next moment, the spider web-like crack disappeared. Everyone looked at the wall in shock. What on earth was going on here? Even Zhuo-Ming looked surprised. What was going on? The Zhuo family indeed had a formation, and it had already been activated, but it wasn't that powerful. It wasn't like he hadn't seen it before. The black and white priest stared at Zhuo-Ming. Master Zhuo, are you not going to let us go? Of course, Zhuo-Ming wanted them to leave. If they kept fighting, the Zhuo family would be destroyed. Before Zhuo-Ming could say anything, someone cried, Oh my God! Everyone look at the sky! Instantly, everyone looked up at the sky. The sky was covered by dark clouds earlier. Chapter 3596, Heavenly Lightning Tribulation, 2. The sky was black, so dark that it made people feel suffocated. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. At that moment, there was a violent explosion. Behind the dark clouds, the dazzling golden lightning ball instantly exploded. The thunderball was filled with rolling lightning and crackling electric arcs. The energy was like a vast sea. Whoosh! A bolt of lightning fell from the sky like an iron chain and struck the ground. Rather than saying that the lightning was like a chain, it was more like a lightning river flowing down. The surging lightning mercilessly struck the place with the most people on the field. Hua Huayu stood at the center with the most people around him. Therefore, he was the first person to be hit. When Hua Huaiva looked up, he could sense how terrifying the lightning river was, so he subconsciously dodged and moved dozens of meters away. However, not everyone was as vigilant as him. An elder of the Hua family was struck by lightning because he couldn't dodge in time. The lightning exploded. The elder's clothes instantly turned to dust, and all the hair on his body was charred. Even his defense of the spiritual overlord stage was instantly destroyed. He was burnt, and intense pain spread throughout his body. Half of the elder's head was hit by the lightning. Half of his face was normal, while the other half was charred black. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. What's his level? Bukong took a deep breath. Hua Huayu was also extremely depressed. He took a deep breath and said, He's a level 3 spiritual overlord. Bukong exhaled. That's good news. He was much stronger than a level 3 spiritual overlord. However, Hua Huayu turned around and looked at Bukong. Don't you, Imo? Bukong asked, No what? Hua Huayu said, This lightning river seems to be at level 3 of the spiritual overlord stage 2. Bukong heaved a sigh of relief. Before he could say that it wasn't too bad, Hua Huayu frowned and said, I heard from my mother that the lightning tribulation is a reflection of a person's own strength. Bukong asked, What do you mean? Hua Huayu said, The power of the lightning tribulation is the same as your strength. Bukong's expression changed drastically. Holy crap! Hua Huayu had a bitter expression. I hope I'm wrong. I hope this isn't a lightning tribulation. But at this moment, someone exclaimed, Look! Look over there! Everyone turned to look at the roof. Previously, the person sitting there looked like a balloon. At that time, no one could recognize who that person was, but now. She's a level 9 spiritual king. No, she's already a spiritual overlord. How did she make a breakthrough so quickly? Hua Huayu's expression changed. Bukong quickly asked, What did you see? Hua Huayu was raised by Mrs. Hua, so he definitely knew a lot more than other people. Hua Huayu's expression was very ugly. His face was sinister and distorted. He stared at the person and gritted his teeth. I know who that is. Feng Wu. Hua Huayu took a deep breath. That Feng Wu from the Feng clan. That Feng Wu who competed with our Wushuang for the crown prince. That Feng Wu with the divine phoenix blood. Feng Wu? Bukong knew who Feng Wu was because the itinerant cultivators had gathered in the imperial capital to kill her. Chapter 3597, Heavenly Lightning Tribulation, 3. However, after hearing about the spirit diagram sword, everyone made it their priority. Feng Wu still had to be killed. However, isn't she a level 4 spiritual king? Bukong frowned. Everyone had received the bounty, so they knew exactly how capable Feng Wu was. She's going to advance to the spiritual overlord stage now, right? Bukong frowned. Why is she making breakthroughs so quickly? She's as fast as Hua Wushuang. Hua Huayu's heart skipped a beat as if an idea had flashed across his mind. However, that thought disappeared too quickly, so he didn't catch it in time. Hua Huayu said, She's going to break through to the spiritual overlord stage in such a short period of time. If we don't kill her now, she'll do it again. If we let her do that, it'll be difficult to kill her in the future. Bukong glanced at Hua Huayu. Why should we care about her? We're all peak spiritual overlords. What's the difference between a peak spiritual king and a level I spiritual overlord? Hua Huayu, it's so obvious that you're using us as your borrowed weapons. Hua Huayu's expression turned ugly. Bukong smiled. But don't worry. We're definitely going to kill Feng Wu, and we're going to do it right now. She's right here in front of us. If we don't kill her now, I'll think it's a waste of this opportunity. Bukong said to everyone around him, I've reserved Feng Wu's head. Don't try to steal it from me. However, someone objected. Bukong, that's not fair. You already have Hua Wushuang, so you almost have the spirit diagram sword. And now you've claimed Feng Wu's head. Why are all the benefits yours? Why did we come all the way to the imperial capital? To be your thugs? The black and white priest frowned slightly and told Bukong, Don't be too greedy. All the people present were spiritual overlords. If they were too greedy, they would be easily surrounded. Bukong said indignantly, In that case, I'll let you have Feng Wu. If you can't kill her, I'll do it then. As he spoke, Bukong carried Hua Wushuang to a remote corner. Hua Huayu watched helplessly as his daughter was taken away, but he couldn't say a word. Once he objected, the situation would be reversed. He could not let the Zhou family and the itinerant cultivators join forces. Right now, many people were staring at Feng Wu and smirking. Outside the Zhou family's door, Yu Minji jumped to his feet. They're going after Xiao Wu. I want to go in. However, the 3 elders stopped him. Miss Feng Wu told me not to let anyone in without her permission. Standing on the top of a tree, Yu Minji could see everything in the Zhou family's yard. He was so anxious that he was about to jump off the tree. But they recognized her and are going to besiege her now. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. From the rapid sound waves, one could tell how powerful the three of them were. That's Hong Yang and Hong Feng, the brothers. There's also Priest Dust. All three of them want Feng Wu's head, but if Feng Wu dares to sit here, she'll make sure that they won't succeed. Black and White Priest was the strongest and most cautious among the itinerant cultivators. He wouldn't take the lead. He wanted to see what would happen to those three people. The next second, they attacked Feng Wu at the same time. Chapter 3598, Heavenly Lightning Tribulation 4. One pointed his sword at Feng Wu's forehead. One tried to throttle her. And the third aimed a fist at Feng Wu's chest and tried to smash it. The three of them were at least level 3 spiritual overlords. Don't be afraid. Little Phoenix whispered in Feng Wu's ear. You'll break through to level 2 of the spiritual overlord stage in an instant, and they'll be struck by your lightning tribulation. Right now, Little Phoenix had a serious look on its face. Feng Wu had never been in such danger. Yu Minji wanted to rush in, but he ran into the same problem as the other spiritual overlords in the yard. He couldn't get in. The formation was completed when no one was looking. The people inside couldn't leave, and the people outside couldn't enter. Dragon-elephant wave formation? The elder next to Yu Minji was shocked. Feng Wu went into the Zhou family's house alone. All the spiritual overlords were assigned to guard the area around the Zhou family. At first, the elders didn't think much of the formation and only felt that Feng Wu was messing around. But now, when they realized no one could get in or out, they were really shocked. The dragon-elephant wave formation was a formidable major formation. That girl had casually set it up and actually succeeded? Why did it feel so unreal? Many people thought that way. They all looked at the scene in front of them in surprise. They had thought that they would have to fight a bloody battle in the end, but Feng Wu had only used them to set up the formation. General Gao and General Yuan looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. General Yuan muttered to himself, Can she survive this? She's really bold. General Gao said, I only know that if we don't protect her well and let her die, we'll be dead too. With that, General Gao kicked the towering wall. He used all his strength, but he still couldn't shake it. General Gao was really shocked. In the Zhou family's yard, 3 people were attacking Feng Wu. At that critical moment, everyone was shocked to see that the 3 spiritual overlords were sent flying by a terrifying force. Hong Feng, who was the weakest, spat out a mouthful of blood in midair. His older brother, Hong Yang, was a little bit better. When he landed, he retreated desperately, leaving a long trail of footprints on the ground before finally stopping. But the moment he stopped, boom! The lightning river in the sky poured down. 3 thunderbolts were aimed at the 3 people who were attacking Feng Wu. They struck down like lightning whips. Hong Feng was the first to be hit and looked like he had been burnt. His clothes were destroyed and most of his body was charred black. The second one headed straight for Hong Yang. The third headed for Priest Dust. Hong Feng's expression changed. Under the strong light, everyone could see Hong Feng's terrified face. He drew his sword to fight against lightning. But, boom! The lightning river was like a lightning whip, sending Hong Feng flying into the air and crashing down. Before he could land, the lightning poured down again like a downpour. When the lightning dissipated, everyone saw a burnt corpse. It only had a pitch-black skeleton left. There was nothing else. Oh God! Everyone was shocked by what they saw, be it the spiritual overlords in the Zhou family's yard or those outside. Chapter 3599, Level 2 Spiritual Overlord 1. They admitted that the thunder element was very powerful in attacks, but how could it be so terrifying? They subconsciously looked up at the sky, only to see the lightning river in the sky pouring down like pillars of light. 4, 5, 6. More are coming. Fear appeared on Bukong's face. These lightning rivers seemed to be tailor-made for them. Every single one of them was filled with energy, and lightning whistled as they covered the sky. The lightning was so oppressive that it made one's heart palpitate. Electric arcs flashed on the lightning river. These lightning bolts would still explode, badly mutilating people. Every lightning river found its corresponding person and chased after him. For example, Bukong was at the peak of the spiritual overlord stage, then the power of his corresponding lightning was at the peak of the spiritual overlord stage. Bukong was so frightened that his face turned pale, and he broke out in cold sweat. However, the lightning had locked onto him and was chasing after him. No matter how fast Bukong was, the lightning was faster. He had only run for a while before he was caught. The surging thunder energy hit the top of his head. Bukong quickly put a defensive barrier over his head, but it was of no use. A spiderweb-like crack appeared on the defensive barrier. Bukong's face was pale, and he was in a panic. He hurriedly used his spiritual essence to repair the cracks in the defensive barrier, but he couldn't repair it as fast as if it was destroyed. He had just recovered a little when the second bolt of lightning appeared above his head again. Another lightning bolt struck down. "Screw you!" Bukong almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Bukong was at the peak of the spiritual overlord and could do whatever he wanted on the continent. The moment he entered the Zhou family, he had been very rude to the heads of the two families. However, the lightning tribulation almost made him helpless. Bukong really couldn't understand. What the hell is going on? Why is there such a lightning tribulation? Is it really Fengwu? That's impossible. Bukong thought. No matter how powerful Fengwu was, she had only just become a level I spiritual overlord from a level 8 spiritual king. Almost everyone here had gone through the lightning tribulation of the spiritual overlord stage and didn't find it a big deal. But this lightning tribulation, that bolt of lightning was aimed at Bukong. Bukong panicked. He didn't wait for the cracks in the protective barrier to be repaired before running away. His first reaction was to run outside. He thought if he left the Zhou family, he might be able to get rid of the strange lightning tribulation. However, Bukong wasn't the only one who thought that way. The 40-odd spiritual overlords here all wanted to escape. All of them wanted to escape from the walls of the Zhou family. However, they couldn't get out. It was only then that they remembered that the Zhou family's formation had been activated. The walls were sealed, and they couldn't escape no matter what. Hence, everyone began to look for Zhou Ming. Where's Zhou Ming? Find that old bastard. Until now, Bukong still thought that the formation was activated by the Zhou family. That old bastard is so despicable. He's going to lock all of us up and kill us with the lightning tribulation. Bukong was furious. Find Zhou Ming. Everyone was being chased by the lightning tribulation. The lightning tribulation swept down from the sky and aimed at the person it had identified. Every strike was accurate and none of them missed. Chapter 3600. Level 2 Spiritual Overlord 2. Many of the spiritual overlords here were already covered in blood, and their bodies were charred black. Soon, someone dragged Zhou Ming out and threw him to Bukong. Zhou Ming was the weakest of them all, so the lightning tribulation that was chasing him was also the weakest. That was why he was still in good condition, but he wouldn't be when Bukong caught him. Bukong grabbed Zhou Ming and slapped him. What the hell is the Zhou family doing? Stop the formation and let us out. Zhou Ming almost fainted from the slap. He tried to explain. We didn't activate the formation. No, it's no longer under our control. If I could, I would have run away. Would I still be here? Bukong was speechless. That was right. So, what the hell is going on with this lightning tribulation? What the hell is the Zhou family doing? Bukong yelled at Zhou Ming. Zhou Ming almost stopped breathing. This isn't our doing. If we could do that, I wouldn't have let you hold me by my neck. Bukong was stunned again. Zhou Ming pointed at the Zhou family's elders that were running around and the charred bodies on the ground. Tears welled up in his eyes as he bellowed at the top of his lungs. If it's really the Zhou family's doing, will we let our elders die? Bukong was rendered speechless again. That was true. Bukong said, Then what the hell? Zhuo Ming pointed at the girl on the roof, who looked like she was covered in divine light. It's really her? That's impossible. The idea had crossed Bukong's mind because she was making a breakthrough right there. However, this lightning tribulation is too intense. It's not something a weak little girl like her can bring. Bukong still didn't believe it. He kept feeling that there was a mighty figure hiding in the Zhuo family. Zhuo Ming was on the verge of tears. A weak little girl? You think she's weak? She was only a spiritual lord a few months ago, and a few days ago, she was a level 4 spiritual king. Now, she's a level 8 spiritual overlord. Have you ever seen someone who broke through a whole stage in less than half a year? You call this weak? You call this impossible? Envy filled Zhuo Ming's eyes as he yelled at Bukong, "Give her another 6 months, and she'll become a spiritual saint." Bukong almost burst into laughter at Zhuo Ming's words. Had Zhuo Ming gone crazy? Advanced to the spirit saint stage in half a year. Do you know how many years I've been stuck at the spiritual overlord stage? Bukong sneered at Zhuo Ming. Spiritual saint stage? What a joke. You'd better wait until she reaches level 2 of the spiritual overlord stage first. In my opinion, she'll need at least 3 to 5 years. Just then, someone cried out, "Holy crap! Look at Feng Wu. Look at her." Everyone turned to Feng Wu again. All the spiritual essence in nature surged toward her. A level 2 spiritual overlord, Zhuo Ming mumbled to himself. She's already a level 2 spiritual overlord. In such a short time, she actually, Bukong was also a little stunned. He had just said those harsh words, but he was immediately proved wrong. Because of Feng Wu's breakthrough, the lightning tribulation stopped for a moment, and the brief silence was eerie and terrifying. Just then someone asked, "Shouldn't Feng Wu bear the lightning tribulation herself? Why are we getting attacked?" You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.